sit back and get ready to have the most fun you ever had with an electronic device. But it's coming at you, Pete. It's coming towards you.
Glad I had those big trees taken out of the backyard. So. Including the apple tree that was like 12 feet from the house.
This is the one time where it benefits you for being in a bunker. Although, I don't know, that shelf looks pretty...
If the wind ever came in through the window and swirled, this room would be a cartoon.
It already... Trust me, it already is.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome out to the Get On With It Sports Show. It is Wednesday, September 1st, 2021. Jersey Johnny coming at you. And with me, as always, is none other than Mr. RadioPete and Mr. Harry Lug Nutz. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
How the hell are you?
Very tired for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. When did you, and no idea why. None whatsoever.
Probably just... breaking down, slowly dying. Things like that.
I got you. Stuff like that. I'm sorry. I just had to plug my phone in because there's like a hurricane afoot. So,
hurricane warning. What is this one's name?
Well, we're under. This one is Ida.
Ida.
I'm pretty sure that it did a little bit more damage in Louisiana than it's going to do here. But
yeah, poor folks in Louisiana.
Yeah, that sucks for them.
So
it was ironically it was on the 16th anniversary of Katrina. That's weird. It's like literally the day. It's weird. But,
so we're kind of in the same situation as we were in the promo.
Yeah, exactly.
The storm is headed my way.
Chose that one for.
We've had, I'd say, 2 or 3 short bands of rain. Heavy rain for about 10 minutes, maybe.
It's ironically that you said short bands today, but we'll get to that later. So, you see,
it might not be ironic. It might be on purpose.
It might be on purpose. Look at that.
But we don't want to give too much away.
No. That's later on.
Bands of rain.
Bands of rain. Bands of rain.
Like the rings of Saturn.
The winds of Saturn. There you go. But in any event, yeah, there's wind outside. There's a tornado watch until 10 o'clock Eastern time. There was a tornado warning about 30 miles west of here, and a tornado apparently touched down about 45 miles south of here. So just about a half an hour ago. So,
it's all a conspiracy, man.
I believe so. I do believe so. So how are you guys on this fine evening?
Good. Yeah.
How's Denver these days, Harry?
Denver these days is great. We had the Underground Music Showcase this past weekend. That was rather splendid. So,
Nice.
Good time. Good time. Late nights. Not enough sleep. Maybe that's why I'm tired.
There you go.
That might have something to do with it.
I got a new. I got to get the name of the brewery. I heard it the other day and I totally forgot to write it down. But I got to let you know there's a new brewery. Opened in Denver. I'm not sure exactly where.
There's 3 that's open since the podcast started.
Since we started, exactly. I know. But apparently all they do is Czech lagers. That's it. Not just lagers, Czech lagers. That's it.
You mean Czechoslovakian?
Czechoslovakian lagers, yes.
Well, you can't go wrong with that.
Actually, is it Czechoslovakia anymore? No, just Czech, right? There's the Czech Republic and Slovakia.
And Slovakia, yes.
Right. Two separate countries.
Yes.
So how many Czech lagers are there in existence?
Well, there's a Pilsner lager. You can make. It depends on the style you make. Depends on how you brew it, the ingredients you use, the specific malt or hops or anything else. You can make 19 different ones if you want, but that's all they do is Czech lagers. That's it.
It's called Czech Cohesion.
What makes it a lager?
The type of fermentation. You ferment it cold, so you ferment it like 40 degrees or so. An ale fermented at like 68 degrees, somewhere in there. So
so they make a lot of different beers.
You can make. You ferment them. The higher the temperature, the quicker they make. So 68 degrees for an ale, you can ferment that in like 2 weeks and put that out. Lagers take 5-6 weeks, sometimes 8 or 10 weeks for a lager to get done. But it's cleaner, smoother. Stuff like that. So it's this
more Czech
style. More Czech, right? Yeah, exactly.
All right. See, I learned something new.
Think of that. There you go.
If I watched the other podcast, I would probably know this.
You can check that out. Exactly. No pun intended. See what I did there? Check that out.
It's called Cohesion Brewing.
Cohesion. That's it. Cohesion.
And I'm not sure if they're actually making their own beer, but
they are making their own beer.
They are making their own beer.
They are making their own. Yeah, because my a buddy of mine was actually at the brewery a week and a half ago.
Nice.
And, yeah, they're making their own beer, and yeah, it's supposedly very tasty.
So now there's a place that it's the owner a check also?
I don't know.
Don't know.
That I do not know. I do not know that information.
I do know a bar where the owner is a Czech, and they have tons of Czech beers. They don't brew it themselves. They actually get them from Czechoslovakia.
There you go.
And I don't have to go to 38th and Steel to drink them. So we'll see. We'll
Is
see what's
38th
going
still
on.
a location of Cohesion?
Yes.
And that's far from you?
It's not far. It's just I'm lazy.
And the Czech bar is a lot closer.
It's far if you're lazy.
Is that the one we were at that time late at night? Where we had the nightcap there at that?
No, that was the Englewood Grand.
The Grand, that's right.
Yeah, no, totally different. But yes, well, that'll be interesting. That'll be good. It's in a world in the land of IPAs. I am very, very, very excited that there's another place that's selling lagers.
There you go. So you got that and Bierstadt. You're good to go, right?
That's all I need. I go to both. I'll go to each one once a year.
You're good. And whenever I come out there, obviously you got.
Well, Bierstadt's great on like a Tuesday night if they're open. But if going to that part of Denver on the weekend, I would have to have 17 Bierstadts to not want to commit murder to every individual I run into at night.
On the way back.
Yes, but Denver's wonderful.
Sure.
Yes,
absolutely.
Except for that part on the weekend.
Except for that one.
And a few other places where you don't ever want to go.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's really not the places; it's the people that are there.
6 of 1.
There's nothing wrong with Denver per se. It's the people that show up.
Right, the people that are there. Yeah. But
I feel that way about the people who live on Long Island.
I see what you're saying.
It's not the place that's terrible.
It's just most
fucking assholes that live here.
There's already a dozen breweries that are slated to be opened in 2021.
I was going to say a dozen breweries that are slated to be opened this week.
Yeah.
Right, I gotcha.
Now, do all these breweries have, or many of them have, like a little tasting room or like a bar that's attached, right?
Yep. Yeah,
you walk in and you order what you want, and you can do a flight or get a taster or whatever you want. Yeah,
but you can hang out there for a while is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, they're basically bars that close early.
Yeah. Bars that close early and only serve the
brewery scene here is where millennials with kids bring their kids and dogs to go day drinking.
Yes.
So
that is a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
At what time do they close?
During the week,
between 8 to 10.
Typically during the week around 10, and on the weekends, I think some of them stay up until midnight.
So here's what I think. I think this is a great thing. The more, the merrier, because let's assume they all have a certain level of decency at the very least.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's to say the quality of the beer made there. Eventually, you're going to, anywhere you go, it's only going to be a handful of people there.
That's
because they'll be spread out.
There's
now,
more than you'd think. But
they're all always crowded because the breweries are not outpacing the beer drinkers who are moving to Denver all the time. You see, there's this rumor, there's this theory out there that weed brought people to Denver. No,
beer did.
And the lifestyle and the breweries tie into the demographics that are moving here. So the young millennial couple who likes to wake up at 6 a.m. to go hiking, they get all their drinking in between 11 and 5. And then the elder millennials who now have kids, they can bring their kids and dog to these breweries are literally have playgrounds on them. So it's where my grandfather used to sneak me into the bar, just told me to be quiet. Right. Now it's open, and they're bright and loud, and there's games, and it's horrible.
Well, there are a couple breweries. I'll give you, for instance, I won't name some of the breweries, but like in Jersey here, there's one brewery that opened up a couple years ago, and it's a beautiful brewery, nice space. It's on like a farm kind of thing, and they have downstairs. They have seating. If you're bringing your kids, you sit downstairs. They have outside seating. Kids can sit out there too. Dogs are outside downstairs. But they also have an upstairs inside, and they have an upstairs outside. No kids, no dogs. Just for, that's.
Did you get all that? Inside, outside, upside down.
Upside, inside, outside, upside down.
Isn't that a song? Sounds like too many stairs to be doing.
You don't want to be downstairs and you don't want to be outside, is what I'm hearing.
No.
You want to be upstairs. You want to be on the balcony outside or upstairs if you don't want to be around kids. That's it, pretty much. And there are times that look. A lot of these breweries actually, there are times during the week that kids aren't really there.
No, of course.
So you can
look. There's one literally
9 o'clock at night.
There's one up the block. There's one up the block for me, and it's always crowded.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of these places, especially in today's world, are getting the right idea because they have a lot of outdoor seating, or at least they have the ability to make you feel as if it's open and ventilated and somewhat indoor outdoor ish. Right. So we are the Napa Valley of beer. And
pretty much.
And
there's only a few. I mean, there's let's say there's Denver, there's San Diego. San Diego's fits the bill.
But Denver's the OG. I mean, San Diego definitely.
Denver's the OG. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Denver's
and
the OG.
And we have more and more diversity, and certainly leading the way with that.
And up in up in New England, I'm gonna just use New England just generically, but like Portland, Maine, and over like the Burlington, Vermont, and even right around Boston, those areas are killing it too. But yeah, you're right. Denver's the OG. But it's everywhere now. It's just
of course,
it's amazing, and more to come. We'll leave it at that. But
and a lot of them are really good. It's
oh yeah, the skills and the level of the quality of the liquid that these breweries are putting out is amazing right now. It's you go from one to another and you just drink something better each time, and it's and then you go back to the first one and it's even better than the last one you had. So it just keeps going. It's really cool.
And by the time you're 55, you have the gout, and you die early. It's great.
It's just I mean, here's the thing, right? You don't go there and drink 30 pints a day.
No,
you go and you drink, maybe 1 or 2 pints in a flight.
Right.
So, and a flight adds up to 1 beer. So you're having 2 or 3 beers.
The flight thing, I think, is more of a. It seems like more of a tourist thing. I don't really ever see anybody ordering flights anymore. Maybe it's just. I'll
go to a brewery that's 8 minutes from here. And
right.
I'll have a flight.
I'm saying the first time you go to one, usually you do.
Right. Well, no. Right. If you're going, if they put a beer on that, like if the brewery that I go
to,
they
always have a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's one beer and one new beer that they're putting out, and that's the only reason I'm going there. I'm going there to have that one new beer, and I'm getting a 4-pack or something to go. Yeah. Then that's all I'm doing. I'll just get that one beer and go. Right. But if I'm going there and there's a bunch of stuff, I'm not having 4 or 5 big beers, big pours. I'm having a flight. That's how I'm drinking mine.
No. What is that?
A flight is 4 ounce pours, 4 or 5 different beers.
Oh, okay.
So you can.
Remember the small little cereal boxes that came in the variety pack?
Yeah, the
same kind of premise.
The Kel Bowl.
That's right. Same premise.
Kel Bowl pack. Okay.
Right.
Only with beer.
Individual. There you
right.
go. Right. Exactly. So
only you don't have to fight your sibling for the
right.
for the Lucky Charms,
because he can order his own.
Flakes, yeah.
The Frosted Flakes. Yeah, you get left with the Cheerios.
Exactly.
Or the Corn Flakes.
Just the regular. I like Corn Flakes.
I like Corn Flakes.
Cheerios. They're good. Some every now and then it's good to have.
You like them now. Did you like them when you were 5?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Of course, I probably doused them with sugar, but yeah.
You just put a ton of sugar on top of them. Made them your own Frosted Flakes.
That's right.
Same thing.
Exactly.
That's
right.
Yeah, but you put the milk on first.
Oh yeah.
Because you didn't want the milk to wash the sugar off of
right. Plus, if they get a little wet, you stir it up a little bit so they're a little wet, and then the sugar sticks to them. Otherwise,
exactly.
Otherwise,
smart.
But the sugar at the bottom of the bowl at the end is kind of a nice special
when
treat.
You get that spoonful,
spoonful of loving.
Spoonful of sugar, spoonful of loving. There you go. Keeps the motor running.
1970s milk with 1970s sugar in it.
That's right. That's right.
Gives new meaning to throwing me a banana peel, but that's another story for another day.
That's right. All right. Well, next week, top 10 cereals.
Top 10 cereals next week. There you go. Gotta love it. All right. Well, what are we here for? Sports, right? Yeah, there you go.
I don't know what we're here for. I really don't anymore. I just
exactly. Well, there's a little bit of baseball we can chat about really quick and get that done because we're in the last month of the season, right? We're approaching the playoffs. There'll be a lot more to talk about once we get closer to October. And
there's a lot to talk about now, and it's interesting. Baseball's.
No, it is. I mean, no, there's plenty of talk. But there'll be more, is what I'm saying, when we get closer to October and that. So. More intricate details, if you will. But
I think the most exciting thing is the New York Mets have figured out a new way to piss off their fans.
Unbelievable, right? I mean, and here you gotta first of all, Baez and Lindor. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. If they want to go like this, I couldn't care less what they want to do after they get a hit or score a run or whatever. Do whatever the hell you want to do. How moronic was it for him to say that? To actually admit to the press that that's what they're doing.
Well, is this the best Mets story of the year? Does this beat Donnie?
Donnie.
The hitting
Donnie
coach?
Stevenson.
Yeah.
Stevenson. Right. And the rat and the raccoon.
Right.
And here's another one. Throw it on top. Zach Scott, the GM.
Yeah.
He got arrested for DWI today.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, you guys have a lot of. I mean, top 10 Mets incidents of the year would be.
I look at the Mets, and you know what I hear every time I look at what's going on with the Mets right now? I hear the Benny Hill theme playing.
Yeah.
Yes. It's stupid.
What-
It makes you
for
think
those-
that the Wilpons were actually more, stable.
Right. Well, for those who don't know, what was the thumbs down?
The thumbs down. They were doing thumbs down because the fans have been booing them. Right? They've been playing like shit.
Right.
But you're not allowed. Oh my God, you might upset them. They might cry. So you can't boo them. That's going to hurt their feelings. So they're giving it right back to the fans by booing the fans.
Right.
Thumbs down on your booing.
Thumbs
fans.
down on your booing, you guys.
That's really rough. That's really rough.
We won, two of our last 12. So
That's
thumbs
right.
down.
Thumbs down. How dare you boo me? I only make $341 million
I mean,
every 10 years.
what's lamer, Lindor's batting average or the response to the fans booing?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think it's a toss-up on that one.
Yeah.
When you're hitting 2-0 whatever.
That was a 212 response.
Yeah, it was a 212. I think you're right. I believe.
Maybe
you're right.
208. Yeah.
But they apologized. They apologized yesterday,
Well,
and
of
then
course
they
they
went
did.
out
They
and won
had
both
to.
games in a doubleheader.
Yeah. Well, and what's his name?
Baez.
Luckily, because the guy didn't know how to tag him, scored the winning run.
Well, here's the thing too. If the guy hadn't made the error in left field, he would have never left third base. He would have stopped.
Oh, he got on a. By the way, there's a lot of infield hits going on this month in baseball.
Tons of infield hits.
What the hell's going on? People. I think it's because everybody in the infield is playing a different position than they have all year, and nobody knows how to throw somebody out from third base.
And not only that,
it's
but
unbelievable.
What happened to charging the ball? I mean, that ball that Baez hit yesterday in the ninth inning, that literally, I could have run 20 feet to get to that ball before it got to me.
And why can't a third baseman or a shortstop? I mean, one hop I'll give you, but what is this new trend for rolling it literally to first base? I don't understand any of this. Right. It's unbelievable.
Bocce ball. He's like kind of practicing for later in the pit.
I mean, look, I've always said hit. If it's the 8th or 9th inning, just hit a ground ball to the shortstop or the third baseman, and you got an 85% chance of getting on first base.
If you can leg it out, if you're a pretty quick runner, if you hit a slow roller to third or short, you're
not
probably
even a slow roller.
Well, I mean, the faster you get it there, obviously they have a shot. But if you hit a slow roller, they're not charging the ball anymore.
I'm talking regular ground balls.
Right.
That's where I'm seeing infield hits. I mean, look at what was the Yankee game last week with Odor at the end, with gave Chapman another chance to blow it. But I mean, that was a hard hit ball.
It was a hard hit ball, and he just couldn't come up with it.
He moved 1 foot, got it, and couldn't throw him out. And it wasn't like it was Ricky Henderson or Mickey Rivers legging it out. It was a guy. Okay, he had decent speed, but there's no way I saw it last night too. It's insane.
Right.
I just think there's a lot of infielders playing who are either back to playing a position they haven't played in 7 months, or playing a position that they had never played before, and they just don't have the arm strength to hit the first baseman where they actually can catch it and throw somebody out. Maybe it's just because of the games I'm watching, but it seems like there is what the no hitter was in May and June is now the infield single.
Yeah.
What's our no hitter count at now?
9,
and it was 7 after 6 weeks, right?
7 after 6 weeks.
We're going to have 15 no hitters.
It's amazing when you start checking people's gloves and belts.
Amazing when yeah. I wonder how the stock in Spider
Tack still two or three more no hitters since then is still a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. That's because people wave at
but it's.
Spider Tack is probably doing fine though, because they play baseball in other countries, and
they
probably learned about Spider Tack, so their sales are just fine.
Just fine.
I use it when I go to the grocery store.
Do you now?
Yeah.
All right.
Helps me really get a good grip on that bag of salad that somebody's wrestling for me for.
That's good. Boom. You just pull it right out of here. How did you do that?
That's right.
Right. What you call it? Well, ironically though, they're having a 4-game win streak. Although MLB.com standings show that they only have a 3-game win streak, but that's because the first game yesterday was a continuation of an April 11th game,
Right.
so they don't count that as part of the win streak. They didn't win it yesterday.
Yeah,
they
Mets
won
are
it
on
in April.
Mets are on a 4-game win streak, and the Yankees are going backwards on a 4-game losing streak.
Yeah,
Bunch of tough games that
yeah,
Corey Kluber.
Yeah, but how many did they win in a row?
It's still
13.
they can't there's no way they're going to catch the Rays now. I just hope they can hold on to the wild card spot.
I think they'll hold on to wild.
I think
card.
they're
still
all
up.
you know,
They're up by still up by 2 games.
Well, I think but the reality of it is that through all of this, I think the one, everybody was talking about the Yankees and how hot they were. I think the one thing that got lost in all of that is how little ground they made up on the Tampa Bay Rays, because Tampa Bay was almost as hot. And now, if you look at the last 15 games, they're better.
Tampa went 21-6 in the month of August. 21-6.
I mean, people are talking about the Dodgers and the Giants and the Astros in the equation, but I mean, I think the 2 teams that you have to really look out for are the Brewers and Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay might be the best team in baseball.
Mm-hmm. I have to agree.
I mean, they play in a really tough division where 4 of the teams are in playoff contention, and they seem to be able to beat those teams really well. I mean, obviously the Yankees had a little bit of success against them in the last 2 series, but they're beating up on Boston, they're beating up on Toronto there, and they just win.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's really talking about it, but that's really my take on all of this. Is that
would be an interesting.
Tampa Bay is pretty scary.
And could you imagine if Milwaukee comes along and wins the World Series this year?
That would be a hell of a year for Milwaukee.
Right?
Then
Green Bay just has to win the Super Bowl, and you're good to go.
Right.
So, but in any event, yeah, it's crazy with that. I can't believe it. And they started this 4-game losing streak in Oakland too, right? So.
Right. I mean, they won the first game, then lost 2 close ones. Oakland again is one of those teams that, Oakland. There's a lot of good teams that are all much better than 500, all sort of vying for that last wild card spot. And look, they caught the Angels at home and couldn't beat them. So they're starting. I'm not sure all of these guys coming back from injuries right now. I can't figure out what their starting pitching rotation is, the Yankees. I just can't. I don't know what it is. I don't know who's in the lineup anymore.
Right.
And Corey Kluber did not have I guess if you look at it, he pitched pretty well, except for the 1 inning where he gave up a grand slam.
Right. Other than giving up the 4 runs in the 1 inning.
Other than giving up 5 runs in 4 innings. He was fine. But Talon didn't look good. So maybe the starting pitching starting to come back down to earth. But next couple weeks
will tell. I mean,
they've got a bunch of the Yankees don't have an easy schedule to round out the year.
Yeah, well, they depending on how they play next weekend, it might be kind of easy. Not this coming weekend, next weekend.
Well. I'm sure they'll get swept by the Mets. I mean, that's kind of how this Yankees season goes,
and kind of how the Mets season goes. Too,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but anyway, speaking of the Mets, though, I just want to bring this up, and I am not believing in this. I just think it's ironic. All right, this September 1st in 1973, the Mets were in the NL East. The Mets were in 5th place in the NL East, behind the Expos, the Cubs, the Pirates, and the Cardinals were in 1st place. Mets were 4.5 games back. They were 63 and 71 at this point, to this day in 1973, and I'm pretty sure they went to the World Series. So my point being, and it's not going to happen with this team. Okay, we know that. I'm not saying anything, but it's just ironic that on that same date, they're basically the same amount back. And 5.5 back now. But
you had to win the division back then, which I think is still their best chance of making the postseason this year.
So you never know. Maybe this thumbs down thing and the moronic words out of Baez's mouth. Maybe that and then kicking him in gear or whatever yesterday. Maybe who knows. We'll see what happens. I don't think it's going to.
No, we know. But John, we know.
We know it's not. We know it's not. But stranger things have happened. That's my point. I'm bringing that up. That's all. So,
your optimism is so.
the
It's
cry-
no, it's not
nice.
optimism. I'm just making.
The
I'm
eternal
just.
cry of the Met fan.
Oh no.
Stranger things have happened.
All right, you just. All right, Harry. You just actually said my optimism.
Right.
How long have you known me? My
Well,
optimism. When
But
it comes to
there's always a hope of optimism in there. Like it's up and down, and it's like a crazy girlfriend reacting to everything. But like for me, also I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to tell you in October. I'm going to tell you in November, December. The Giants are going to win 5 games. That's my prediction from the beginning of the season to the end.
Yeah, well, we'll make our predictions next week, but
You'll
I think
see the same thing. You'll start with they could win 11 games, and then they lose the first, and they could win 9. But granted, there's
it's a sliding scale, right?
There's
It's a sliding
tantrums
scale.
and poop emojis in there every week, but it's always all over the place. And then it's like a shot of happy juice, and like something's good's coming out of this.
It's very professional sports talk radio style.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Right? That's what those guys do. The Jets
Every week.
win a game or 2 games in a row, and they go, well, they got an outside shot. And then they stink up the joint next week and go, well, this is what this team is, so don't expect too much.
Don't expect more than that. Yeah, exactly.
So John is he's already there.
You're already there, man.
You are ready for the big time.
You're ready for the big time.
You are ready to pump it up when
what?
something good happens.
I'm sending
let's talk reality when it's not good.
I'm sending my resume in to
should.
NFL to Good Morning Football. Nate Burleson, it left the show because he went out to he went to CBS the morning show on CBS. So, hey, let's open. Let's go. I think the 3 of us should go. I honestly do. The 3 of us, Pete Traeger, what's his name, and Kay Adams.
Yeah, we'll be just like First Take. We just have to figure out which one of us is Molly.
There you go. That'll work. On another note in baseball, did you see the report today about John Smoltz and Al Leiter?
No, are they going to?
No.
Did
Getting married?
Did the Yankees sign them?
The Yankees, the Mets signed Schmaltz. Schmaltz.
Yeah,
He's like John Schmaltz.
Boogie Schmaltz was a pitcher in the 30s.
Exactly. We say Tukey.
He was
Tukey
5'8".
Tukey, isn't that Tukey
104
close?
pounds. Boogie Schmaltz, yeah.
Boogie Schmaltz. There you go. No, Schmaltz. I said it again. Al Leiter and John Smoltz won't appear in the MLB Network studios this postseason and the rest of the season because they refuse to get the COVID vaccine. They both refuse to get the COVID vaccine, so they will both be working remotely on their shows with the network from here on out for the rest of the season. So they refuse to get the vaccine. So anyway, it was just a news report today. I thought I'd bring it up,
I don't think it's going to change the quality of the
Probably
content.
not. Probably not. So.
But now we know they're both jerks.
And unvaccinated.
Unvaccinated jerks.
And definitely not going to be a backup quarterback for the New England Patriots.
Jimmy, cancel that dinner with John Schmaltz that I had.
Schmaltz, yeah. Boogie Schmaltz.
Oh, no, wait.
Boogie Schmaltz.
Okay.
Boogie Schmaltz is at 3. Yeah, he's good.
There you go. He's 3. Yeah. He's at 3 shots before the third was available.
Said one of each.
There you go. He covers bases.
He forgets what he got. So,
And ironically, he got the Johnson last.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
One was COVID, one was rubella, and the other was diphtheria.
Shingles.
Yes.
Shingles.
Yeah. That is a thing, isn't it?
It is.
Shingles vaccine, yes. It's a newer thing, yeah.
You're supposed to get that when you get to a certain age, right?
Yeah, when you hit like mid-50s, approaching 60, something like that, you should get the shingles.
Listen, I like my roof the way it is. So
that's right.
There you go. The slate, tar. What has he got?
Shingles.
My
roof is fine. It's had shingles for 25 years.
So you don't want to get rid of the shingles with a vaccine. You
No.
want to keep them. I got you. I see where you're going.
Out.
So,
Pete, that was a John joke.
There you go. Yeah. So,
just to let you know.
That was a John. Yeah. What you just said, that was a John joke.
You've been listening to him for too long.
You know. So anyway, but yeah. So that's pretty much baseball right now. But I think you're right though. I don't think anybody's catching Tampa. White Sox and Astros might give them a little bit of a run in the playoffs. But the American look. I think there's 4 or 5 teams. I'm not counting Boston out. They'll bounce back. I think the Yankees have a shot, especially
Cole seems to be pitching pretty well, and that gives him a little bit of a chance.
Right.
There's 4 or 5 teams in the American League that are going to be really hard to beat. I mean, getting through the American League this year is not going to be easy.
No. And the Brewers are playing great ball, but, I mean, don't count out the Giants or the Dodgers at this point. The Dodgers are only a half a game back now.
Yeah. Now, the Dodgers, I still think, when you look at if they're healthy, and, I mean, obviously losing one of their top 3 pitchers to idiocy is kind of unfortunate, but still, with what they did at the trade deadline, I think that they're certainly the favorite to win it all.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they just
basically think that it's going to be highly likely that it's a repeat of last year's World Series.
Potentially.
To some point, yeah.
At least for the National League.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I still think the Astros could very easily win the American League this year.
Well, then it could be a repeat of the World Series the year before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just
2 years before. Sorry.
I have more faith in Tampa Bay and Houston and Chicago. Although it's I don't think I'd want if Oakland can slide in. I don't want to play Oakland. No. I mean, they're a team that just seems to be able to they're made for the playoffs. Now, granted, they haven't really been able to win a series in the playoffs, but they're a good team.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's
I don't know. The White Sox though might have that kind of.
The White Sox are good, although the Yankees kind of beat up on the White Sox, other than the corn game, But yeah, the White Sox are good.
They're a kind of team that could, if they get in right, and they haven't been there in a while, right? They're not expected to be one of the favorites, and they're just kind of like, all right, let's just go play. You know what I mean? They don't really think about it, and they stay relaxed. And those kind of teams can. Go pretty far sometimes.
Definitely.
I think they had the best record in the American League for a while there.
Yeah.
I think they're probably in the top 4 teams power ranking wise.
Yeah, but I think they're probably more comfortable with the spotlight off of them.
Sure.
Right? Let everybody talk about Houston. Let everybody talk about the Yankees and Tampa Bay. We'll just do what we do. We'll get in. We'll show up and we'll play. That's even as a division winner.
Right.
Amongst the projected, let's say, other teams who are going to go, they're the ones that are probably expected the least, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, in that they don't have recent playoff experience the way the other teams do.
Right.
I mean, personnel you're going to compare, and this team's better than that. But as far as some of those intangibles,
I think they're right up there. I think they're probably, other than Tampa Bay, I think. For a while there, they were probably, and they probably still are, the second this team. I think most people have Tampa Bay and then either Chicago or Houston as their favorites in the American League.
Right.
And for a while there, Chicago was well ahead of all the. I mean, they were ahead of Tampa Bay.
They were ahead of Tampa Bay. Absolutely.
I mean, I think they're playing 500 ball their last 10 games, but they've won 2 in a row now, and they have a big lead on Cleveland, so they don't really have a lot of pressure in their division. Look, with the exception of the West, there's big leads now. I mean, Tampa Bay is now up by 8 on the Yankees and 10 on Boston.
Right.
And Toronto is sort of fading a bit. But put it to you this way: the Yankees would be a half game out of first place in the Central.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, in other words, Chicago, though, the White Sox, they don't have the playoff experience.
Right.
They're not as well nationally known.
But they do have some veteran pitching. They do have some veteran
I'm not
pitching.
saying they're not a good team. I'm just saying some of those kind of intangibles or those other off the field kind of things they don't really have. Now, I think that's a good thing, and that they're loose. They go, well, we just go in and play. But
there's a reason.
I don't really know the mindset of the team.
There's a reason, though, why they were chosen to play the Yankees for that Iowa game. Obviously, it was close because they could resume the series in Chicago. But with Grandal and Abreu and Anderson, and then what's Lance, the pitcher, they've got some stars. They've got some kind of interesting personalities on that team.
Yeah. They do, but they're not nationally known to a large degree, or as much as stars on other teams.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that works for them.
Maybe it's also a nod because these are up and comers, and here's a team that if they stay together and they come together, they're going to be very relevant for a little bit of time now.
Right.
So let's get them some national, spot. We gotta pick 2 teams to play in this inaugural game of this anyway. So let's do what
I think the Yankees and Astros have more of the name players. Tampa Bay has been there, so they have some guys that people know. Mm-hmm. The teams that always go nameless, they're kind of like the band Boston or something where you can never you don't know what they look like or what their names are. I think are the White Sox and Oakland, and I think Oakland even more so fits that bill.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes that can be a great mindset for
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even a division winner, and of course, baseball, the powers are going to go, hey, we got this pretty good team that, again, the more casual fan does, the White Sox are in first, but they don't know. That's all they know.
Well, it was like the Nationals a couple years ago in Kansas City, a few years before that. I mean, I don't think I could name anybody from those World Series teams.
Yeah, but what's funny though, both of them, the teams within a year or two, they were gone.
Right, because they were able, much like the Oakland philosophy is that they're really good at getting these guys in trades and sort of building a big roster of really good players as opposed to a couple superstars and then trying to constantly fill the holes.
Right.
And then they have them on short contracts and then they do well and then they all demand more money in a small market team and they leave.
And they leave.
Yeah. Right. And the other, larger market teams see their performance and go, we'll pay more.
Yeah, and they overpay them.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did decide who's going to play in the Field of Dreams game next year. They did.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Mets and Tom's River East.
Tom's River didn't do so well this year.
No, they didn't.
What's the odds? What's the odds?
I think Tom's River.
What's the money on Tom's River East?
Plus 200, I believe, to win.
Yeah.
But in any event, no. So it's going to be an interesting September. Let's put it that way. How things shake out. There's a number of teams to watch. There's no clear cut. The Yankees could still do something. I don't think they're 8 games back now from Tampa. So 1 month to make up 8 games is a little difficult. The way Tampa's playing, So they really would have to just collapse, and the Yankees.
Yeah. Well, how many head-to-head games do they have?
Quite a few. I think 7.
There you go. Well, that could be.
Well, if the Yankees sweep the 7, done.
That could be. Right? Listen, that could very well happen, right? An amazing story.
That would be.
Let's see. The Yankees. I think they're playing. I think they are ending with the. Are they? Where's their schedule here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, right. Are they playing? They're still playing the Angels right now, right? Yeah.
Yankees playing the Angels still.
Yeah. Right. So they have 3 games against Baltimore, Toronto. Then they play the Mets, Minnesota. Let's see. Actually, they only have 3 games. That's right. They played 4. So they end the season with 3 at Tampa Bay.
So they have 6 altogether, or just the 3?
Just the 3. Gotcha. Yeah, they just played Tampa. I guess that's what I saw. They have 4 against Toronto. 3. I'm sorry. They have 6. They have 7 against Toronto. 3 against Boston, and 3 against Tampa Bay.
There you go. Right. And don't look out for the Orioles. They're only 32 and a half games out of the wild card.
That's right.
So,
playing that spoiler rule.
There you go. So anyway.
Here's a quick question I wanted to ask. Sure. Primarily John and the other Met fans, but George Springer might have tweaked his knee Tuesday night after coming off the IL on Monday, and we know he's had a few other stints on the injured list. So, if we haven't already determined that maybe it was better they didn't get him?
I couldn't care less about George Springer. I thought it was a good idea, but you know what? Brandon Nimmo, other than the fact that he was out, he has been playing adequate enough so that it's not like center field was just a complete,
Well, my point is Springer's been playing well when he's
been playing
healthy,
and as you would expect to,
time.
But missing the time, he was 2 or 3 stints on the IL. To start the season was one of them, and
right.
And it's not like he's playing lights out either. He's playing well, but he's not playing.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who's not had a great first year with his new team after a big contract. There's a lot of them.
Sure.
And how old?
One comes to mind.
Not to say that he won't have a great second year, but
yeah. And how old is Springer now? I mean, that's the
31.
Yeah,
31 or 32, I think.
He's got a couple good years left in him, but how many years does he really have left? And that was part of the discussion: is how many more years does he actually have left playing center field?
Right.
Right. And he got like a 44-year contract, I think it was.
66. Yeah.
66-year contract.
Yeah, 66 at.
But and then you talk about as far as the Mets
million.
go. Well, let me ask you this: Do you want as a Mets fan, Pete? Do you want Baez back next year, or do you want him to just be a rental for the rest of the year for whatever reason that was obviously a waste at this point? But
how much is it going to cost?
Well, yeah, obviously.
But generally, I mean, he's a.
So do you want to play in second, and you want to move McNeil to third, or McNeil to the outfield?
I'm honestly
use McNeil
gotten
to
a couple of hits
trade
lately. I'm done with Jeff McNeil. He's been a major disappointment
this year. Yeah, definitely, I could see that. But you know
fine.
what though? Between the two of them at second base, remember, the Mets have a second baseman coming back next year.
I think you guys. I think you guys forget about that. You know, he's a career 250, 260 guy with a 300 on base percentage bias. He's a good second baseman. I don't think I don't think he's a game changer.
Yeah, but you know what? I think Cano is, especially if they go to a universal DH next year, Cano's coming off the bench. Maybe play a game or two here.
Yeah, Cano's. Although you don't know, he's had a lot of time to rest his legs.
This is true, but he can't take any more steroids to help him play better either.
Yeah, I know. And look, Baez is above average power for a second baseman, and I'm fine with the guy who hits 250 as long as he's
I mean that's pretty good these days.
I'd rather
as long as you don't have to overpay him,
right?
And and look, he's got the potential to have
he's got 4 home runs this year, so let's not
6.
Yeah.
Well, this year he's not playing well, no question about that.
But I mean, combined, he's got 4 for the Mets. I mean,
4 for the Mets. Yeah.
Yes, he has.
Oh, is it 13? He had 9 for the right or 8 or 9.
No, I think he's got 26 home runs.
22 when he came over. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying
is,
he's got 4 home runs in 19 games for the Mets already. He's got 26 home runs this year and 73 RBIs. So he's a slugger.
And he hasn't played well for the Mets. He's hitting 2-something since coming to the Mets.
227.
He's that's better than
I didn't think it was that high.
But I mean, he was only hitting 240 something for.
I just can't believe that.
Still.
In a contract year, Conforto is just. I mean, yesterday he played pretty decently. He slammed. He popped up the bases loaded or two on or whatever to end the. I guess it was the 8th, maybe 7th. And then threw his bat and his helmet and everything else in the dugout and was pissed off at himself. But he got the walk-off game-winning 2 RBI double in the bottom of the 9th, and then hit a home run in the second game. So. But
look, do we really think the Mets are going anywhere significant this year?
No. I'm just talking about the players.
The Mets. Right. So I'm fine with that because he's not going to get a big deal from somebody else, most likely, or he's less likely to get a big deal from somebody else. I still believe in him, but I don't. Want to
that's my question to you.
Yeah.
Do you think a 1-year deal, a qualifying offer just to see how he does next year out of this whatever funk that they got in this year, to see if they can actually put it together. He can actually put it together next year, and then offer him the contract or let him walk or whatever at that point, or do you let him walk now and go out and find another right fielder?
No, look, he's been more good than bad overall, right?
Right.
So I would.
This is a bit of hot stove talk here on September 1st, but
I know I would want to keep.
Which is usually when the hot stove Mets talk starts. Actually,
if he was having a great year, he would cost a lot of money, and I think it'd be less likely to sign him.
Right.
But
I agree.
Willing to take a chance for a little bit less money.
Well, true story. Well, we'll see what happens. Like I said, it's going to be an interesting September for everybody across the board. We'll see how it all plays out, and we'll go from there.
Hey, just one other thing.
Sure.
Ohtani, I guess, is coming back. Going to start Friday. So
okay.
I know nobody cares, but I like him.
Pitching.
So I'm going to talk about him.
He's pitching on Friday.
Yeah,
I
think he's 3rd or 4th in the MVP voting this year in the American League, without a doubt.
Gotcha.
I mean, if Vlad Guerrero doesn't get it, then forget it.
Yeah, it'll be another sign of the
Vlad Guerrero or Junior.
Junior. Well, I mean, he's the only one playing right now.
Well, you can give it to Guerrero. So. Vladdy, you can give it to Vladdy. So.
Oh, Vladdy, right?
There you go.
Vladdy J.
Question for you guys: should we do the newly formed top 10 now, or should we do football first?
Do we have a quiz?
Do we have to do football?
No, well,
do we have
a little
a quiz
bit to
this
talk
year?
about. We have a
week?
quiz. We have a football quiz.
Football quiz. Oh.
The quiz changes over. It's September, so we're starting football today.
Let's do a football quiz.
So do the football quiz and talk briefly about football, and then we'll do our
Sure.
top 10. All right.
Okay.
So that sounds good. All right. So here's the football quiz. Here we go.
Let me close up the 9 MLB windows I had open.
Was there anything else you needed to talk about?
No, none of them had anything good. I kept opening. Well, maybe we'll talk about that. Let me open a fresh one.
There you go. It didn't work.
Nothing.
All right. Here's the quiz. Tonight's quiz. We're switching to football. Here we go. Tonight's quiz. This is the same question for both of you. We're going to start it off nice and easy. Here we go. 2 quarterbacks stay. You're the GM, right? 2 quarterbacks stay. 3 quarterbacks got to go. I'm going to give you 5. Ooh. 2 quarterbacks stay. 3 got to go. Who are you keeping? Who's going first? Pete, as usual?
Well, of course.
All right. Here we go. Ready? Aaron Rodgers. You want to write him down? You want to remember him? You're good. You can remember.
He can remember 5.
It's not that hard.
Man, well, place your bets.
There we go.
Over, under.
Over here, exactly. How many will Pete remember?
How many can I remember?
Well, as long as you remember 2, right? You're good to go.
The over-under is 4.5.
Right. Aaron Rodgers.
Glenn Rodgers.
Wait, can I ask a question? Is it okay? So obviously it's not current players, and these are all in their prime.
These are all in their prime.
In their prime. Okay.
All in their prime, and there's one current player on here, and I just said
on their deathbed. Who you keep?
There you go. No, all in their prime. 2 of these quarterbacks you keep. 3 got to go. Who are you keeping? Here we go. Aaron Rodgers.
Roy Rogers.
Peyton Manning. Joe Montana. Dan Marino. Or Roger Staubach.
Rodgers, Marino, Manning, Staubach. Who's the 5th one?
Joe Montana.
Montana.
There you go.
Who am I keeping? In their prime.
In their prime, 2 you're keeping, 3 you're letting go. Who are you keeping?
What team do I have?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
All right. I'm keeping.
It's all about the QB here. Who are you keeping?
I'm going to keep Peyton.
Okay. And
fuck Marino.
Something told me that was going to happen.
I guess I'll. Oh, man.
Hard, huh?
Who's the other one?
Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning.
Who's
the other one? Aaron Rodgers.
Fuck Marino. Who's the other one?
Marino's out. Peyton's out. So it's Rodgers,
Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, Roger Staubach.
Montana so Rodgers, Montana, Staubach.
So you got Peyton Manning, and you kicked Dan Marino to the curb already. Who's the 3rd one?
I'll take Joe Montana.
Joe Montana.
I'll keep Joe Montana.
Peyton Manning and
Peyton and Montana, and they could thumb wrestle for who starts.
There you go. All right. Harry, same question.
Montana and Rodgers.
Montana and Rodgers. All right. Sounds like a plan to me. That would have been where I went to. I'd went Aaron Rodgers.
Is this the first time we've disagreed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I think
so. Yeah.
Mine would have been Aaron Rodgers and Joe Montana. That would have been.
All right, so
and mind you, difficult because all 5 are fantastic, obviously. But Peyton, I've said it before, and everybody, and I'm not the only one that said it. Playoffs, not so much with Peyton.
Well, I mean, he's got one more ring than Rodgers, but he sort of won it on the back of a great defense.
Exactly.
He wasn't the Peyton Manning that we all.
Yeah, but he did all he needed to do to
Peyton
win.
Manning won that Super Bowl in spite of his play.
Put it to you this way: as a Giants fan, I'll take any of them.
Oh sure, obviously. But yeah. So there you go. All right.
And if as good as Montana was, and as good as all of these guys were, probably the one person in his prime who was absolutely more mind-boggling than all of them was Dan Marino.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not picking that motherfucker.
Yeah. I feel bad. I feel he's one of those guys that I feel bad for who never was really able to.
Right. If we had a top 5 guys who never won, who,
him and Dan Fouts would be on my list.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Marino was incredible. I have to give him his props.
Yeah, when they played each other, I mean, forget about it. It was like
there's gonna be
watching touch football in the street. It was just
exactly. Well, we got some different top 10s to do this year because we did a lot of baseball. We did a lot of football. Specific ones last football season. Right. So. There just might be top 10 quarterbacks that never won a ring, blah, 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 stuff like that. So we'll see.
Or worse quarterbacks who have won a ring.
or worse quarterbacks that have won a ring. There you go. That's a good one.
Now that's an interesting list.
There you go. So, all right, cool. There you go. There's your quiz for today. So, a couple things on NFL. Next week, obviously, we're doing our NFL kickoff show. So there'll be a lot of stuff we're talking about and got a couple segments. One we're reintroducing, obviously, Beaten by the Coin. We're going to bring back. And
how exciting.
How exciting.
Oh, I got to send you the
and you got
Jet sounder.
New Jet sounder we got coming on.
We
got a new Jet sounder.
Is it just pet sounds played backwards?
Yes, but it's layered over Revolution number 9.
That's right.
Sideways.
That's right. Yes.
You gotta love it.
And a broken 8-track that's indecipherable. That's been stuck in a Ford Pinto.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of the ones my family had I think we had 4 8-tracks in our big cross-country motorhome trip. It's, oh, crap. I can't remember the name of it. Renaissance, Scheherazade, and other stories.
I think everybody had a Charlie's Daniel Band 8-track.
Charlie Daniels Band, yeah, absolutely. But we got a couple new segments to introduce. So we'll do the football big football kickoff next week. Because obviously next Thursday's opening night, so to speak.
I'm not ready for football.
With the big Tampa Bay, Dallas at Tampa Bay Thursday night football next Thursday. So that should be Brady's first win. So we'll talk about that next week though.
You never know.
You never know. You're absolutely right. You never know. It's why they play the games
on any given Sunday. Or
right.
Thursday.
Or Wednesday last year.
Or Wednesday.
Exactly. So, but a couple things for tonight anyway, NFL-wise. Cam Newton, what do you think? You think it was a good move for the Patriots? Yeah,
he's an idiot.
Yeah. And Mac Jones, I don't know how much you watched, obviously, with the Giants game on Sunday.
Well, I mean, he had the luxury of playing the Giants.
This is true. This is very true. But the Giants the Giants defense is decent, but obviously he wasn't playing the first team defense either, Mac Jones. So, but he didn't look bad anytime he was in. And
obviously he looked good, and I think it was just a long time coming for them. I think Belichick was like, do I start the season and muddle this up, or do I just jump in? And I think he finally said, hey, I'm just going to jump in and give this guy.
Give it to him. Give him the reins.
Give him the reins, and then
if it takes a year or two to really get it going,
and then have a backup who's going to be available.
Right. Well, let me ask you.
Who's the backup?
Who's
number 2?
Who's the backup?
I don't know.
That's a good question. Jim, get on that. But in any event,
I did hear his name yesterday morning, and I don't remember who it was.
His name is John Mack.
John Mack.
Mac Jones and John Mack.
John Mack. It's the Mac and Mac.
That's right.
Mac. Double Mac.
Yeah. All right. Well, we wish
it's a veteran. It's a veteran backup.
Right. Well, here's a question though. Right now, who would be? Now Cam Newton. Right. Cam Newton finds himself without a team. Okay. He used to play for the Panthers. Is there a GM anywhere in the league that is used to picking up unwanted ex-Panthers and putting them on the team?
Well, I would say he'd be right for Philly, but Philly's waiting for Deshaun Watson's trial too.
Well, Philly also has they signed what's his face last week?
Yeah,
Gardner Minshew.
Yeah,
so they're ready. They're set.
It's not no.
Oh right, yeah.
Minshew's taking him.
Brian Hoyer is going to be his backup. And Ryan Leaf, he's in there too, right? No Ryan Leaf.
No Ryan Leaf.
Yeah, I mean,
But in any event, my point was just out of curiosity, because this is not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. But who would make a better backup for Danny Dimes? Mike Glennon or Cam Newton?
Probably.
Or Colt McCoy.
Well, look, I just don't know what Cam Newton brings to
any team anymore.
Any sort of, I mean, I would like to think that he has something to offer on the right team, because he is such an amazing athlete, and at times wasn't he an MVP in the league?
Sure. Yeah, it was in the Super Bowl 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I think that on the Giants, the question mark is should Cam Newton be starting on the Giants?
Well, obviously,
and
they're not taking that job away from him.
No, and so I think the Giants, a better backup to Daniel Jones would be somebody who is similar in mediocrity to Daniel Jones and is more of a pocket passer, and right. Can fit into that whatever kind of system that they are. But on paper, Cam Newton's resume is far better than Mike Glennon's. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, obviously it's an obvious question, right. And you're absolutely right. An appropriate quarterback, a more appropriate quarterback to back up Daniel Jones would be Mike Glennon, because there's not going to be any controversy there. Danny Dimes goes out and throws a couple of picks and loses his first 2 games. Everybody's going to be saying put Newton in, and that's not what the Giants are about and what they want to happen this year. Obviously,
right?
It's shit or get off the pot for Danny Dimes, or they're moving on next year with hopefully a good couple of first round picks and some.
After the best year for quarterbacks draft wise since Marino's, what was that, 1980? Yeah. So the Giants will wait till the following year to pick. Well,
there's a couple of decent quarterbacks that could come out. You never know, but
not like this year's class.
Well, that's true too.
I mean, think about the quarterbacks the Giants could have had they kept their original draft position.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
I think Cam Newton brings 2 things, one of which is good and one of which is not good. And that he can bring to a team is the potential that he can come out and play well for a couple of games if your QB has a minor injury and misses a few weeks.
Right.
He still has the ability, I think, maybe to put together a few good games and kind of keep you afloat. Sure. The bad thing is, John, what you just said. If your starter doesn't do well, they're going to look at Newton and people are going to be calling for him to, be the replacement.
Right.
So it's a double-edged sword. But
it's total double-edged sword.
I would think, I don't know. I still think that his drop in performance in the second half had a lot to do with COVID, because he got it. And he wasn't.
But he went from bad to worse. It wasn't like
it wasn't like he was playing lights out in the beginning of the season.
No, he was running and doing what he could do there. So,
right.
But I don't think he had an opportunity to ever get back to being particularly close to Cam Newton because COVID zapped him.
Look, here's the thing too with Cam Newton, that last year his completion percentage was almost 6 points higher than his career average.
Mm-hmm.
His yards per attempt was exactly the same as what it was for his career average. And he's always, he threw, he didn't have a lot of touchdowns. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns last year. But it was on par with his last couple of years in Carolina. It wasn't like he was lighting it up there.
Right.
If he was still
lighting up in Carolina, he'd still be in Carolina.
19, he got hurt.
Yeah, he went to the Super Bowl, and then he bitched about it when they lost. And, listen, there's an interesting contingent of people in Carolina. I don't want to badmouth everybody there. But some of them are freaking racists, and they hated him anyway, or they at least didn't like him. If he'd won, he would have been a hero. But
he's a guy who's easily not liked. He's kind of a flamboyant asshole, let's be honest.
Yeah. But he didn't win. If he'd won, then they'd tolerate it. But he lost, and then he whined about it. And so he was another, inferior crybaby black quarterback to a lot of those people. And there was no way he was ever going to get his mojo back there. Right. By the way, PJ Walker is the current backup quarterback in Carolina.
Yeah.
P.J. Walker.
But look,
unless Sam Darnold breaks his leg or something, and unless he goes out with an injury, I don't see anyone calling for P.J. Walker.
Is P.J. Walker related to J.J. Walker?
Is he related to P.J. Tucker?
He could be. Well, here's the stats from last year: 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions.
Well, but look, here's the thing with Cam Newton is that it's 2021, right? His last real full year was 2018. It happened to be one of his best years of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 24 touchdowns, 13, he had almost 68% completion, which is by far the highest of his career. Mm-hmm. 3,400 yards, which is not his highest, but isn't his lowest. He's always, when did Carolina go to the Super Bowl against Denver? What year was that? 2015?
It's 2015 season, February 2016. Yeah.
So in that year, granted his rushing yards were a lot higher, but he had 500 more passing yards. His completion percentage was under 60%. And, he had 35 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So he did, he put up that was his biggest year touchdown wise. Mm-hmm. And he was much more of a dual threat back then, but it's been 6 years now, and he's played, he had a good year the following 3 years in Carolina. And he just couldn't get back to the promised land. He also I don't think had the team around him, especially defensively, that he had in 15.
Right.
But he has it has been shown that you can game plan against him, and if you get pressure on him, he's beatable.
Right.
But is he done? Is 3 years from a guy who hit 68 completion percentage with 3,395 yards and 24 touchdowns? Is that guy gone?
Well,
and for
a lot of people, he is, because I think of what you just said before. He's sort of a flamboyant asshole, and a lot of people don't like him, so he doesn't get as much slack.
Right.
Look, he could be the biggest flamboyant asshole in the world if he had those numbers this year for the Giants would be a better team.
I don't disagree. I just think there are.
Well, let me ask this question.
Owners in management who don't want to take a chance on him and piss off their fans.
Let me ask this question. With the exception of the offensive line, I think for the last 3 years that he was in Carolina and in New England last year, I think the Giants have more offensive talent at the skill position than either of those teams do, by a long shot, at least on paper this year.
Agreed there too.
And yes, New England's offensive line has always been good, and they actually did a pretty good job of protecting him. But he's also a guy who's never really been comfortable standing in the pocket too long. So if you have protection in a system where somebody wants you to sit back there and throw short passes to people,
right,
but you don't have people open, that's where his game. I think he's best when he has a lot of athleticism around him.
Right.
I don't think I think my point being is I think he would do better with skill position where he could throw the ball too quickly than having a great offensive line and an average set of personnel around him.
He would do better on the Giants with that offensive line, with those skill set.
Yes.
The skill set of his receivers and running backs and so forth,
right,
than Daniel Jones can do.
So look, the Giants won't do it because the management is dead set on not doing anything to question their decision on Daniel Jones.
Right.
And they don't like
they're they're giving it the third year. It's obvious. They're in, they bought in, they're doing what they're doing. So if it works out this year, wonderful for everybody, obviously, right? But if it doesn't, they have the draft capital next year. They can go out. And you know what? We've said it too. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to draft another, first rounder. And if there's somebody that emerges in the college out of college this year, that is a no-brainer, and go get him, another Trevor Lawrence or something like that.
How many more years does Daniel Jones have on his rookie contract?
1, and then the option for the 5th. Yeah. This is his
year.
So
the Giants
they need to cut ties this year.
They're with him for 2 more years. They're not going. The owners of the Giants are not going to eat shit and accept the fact that they drafted the worst quarterback drafted in the last 40 years in the first round.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. No, maybe you're right, but here's the way I see it. Okay, they built up the draft capital to back them up for next year. If it's proven to them, if it's not proven, that's a different story. But if it's proven to them, at least almost beyond the shadow of a doubt that this year that Jones is not going to amount to anything here. We have to cut ties and move on, so to speak. They have the ability to do that. And they don't just have to do that in the draft, though, is where I was going with this. They can actually package Daniel Jones and some of those draft picks up and go get somebody. Like, I don't know. I'm obviously I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers, but that's obviously not going to happen. But, along those lines, somebody that's, hey, you can come here and he can work out for
maybe
the next 4 or 5 years.
If he manages to beat the rap, right?
Sure, yeah, why not? Yeah, absolutely, sure. But something like that, they have a couple of choices.
Here's a list of top potential free agent quarterbacks in 2022. Mm-hmm. So, and some of these are obviously players eligible for a 5th-year option in 2022. Right. So, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Jameis Winston, Sam Darnold's on this list, but obviously that's changed now. Mm-hmm. Cam Newton, that's changed. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andy Dalton. So, look, let's look at those top 3. I don't want Baker Mayfield on the Giants, but and Josh Allen's probably going to stay in Buffalo.
Josh Allen's going nowhere. He's staying. He's in Buffalo for the
long. But what about Lamar Jackson?
Lamar Jackson with the offensive talent around him? Not Baltimore is full of slouches, but
but they've definitely gone backwards. I think in Baltimore talent-wise than his rookie year when he was lighting it up, or his second year, I should say.
Right. He's gotten less support.
Right.
And if the Giants say, okay, here, take Daniel Jones, and take our.
Well, at that point, they don't even have to say take Daniel Jones.
Well, whatever.
They could just not enact the option on his.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. But yeah, take here's 2 first rounders for you.
I mean, can't you see Lamar Jackson sort of being kind of like, hey, if things don't go well, hey, I might really want out of Baltimore, and I mean, is there a better place for him? I mean, of course, I could also see him in Philly. But
then you'd have Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson.
If Philly doesn't get Deshaun Watson,
right? Yeah, but then if Philly doesn't get Deshaun Watson and he does, come back into good graces in the NFL and whatever he's playing next year, and the Giants take him.
I mean, Lamar Jackson's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, right?
Sure.
Yep.
Didn't he win the MVP 2 years ago?
Yep.
The Giants would be stupid. And how old is he? 24, 26?
24, 25 maybe. Yeah, something like that. But what makes you think that Baltimore?
He's 24. He's 20. Well, he might just want out.
Well, that's true too.
He might just want out.
Pursue him, and
Baltimore didn't do a lot to surround him with talent this year, and there's been some.
Did they lose twice to Pittsburgh last year?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and listen, even when he was a rookie, I don't know what his stats are, but he was not known as much for lighting it up with his arm as he was for his legs.
Right.
So, and part of that was him. And
if there's any team where you can benefit from being able to run away from pressure, it's the New York Giants.
Right, exactly.
Oh, by the way, just a quick note. According to the NFL.com website, which I believe is the official website of the league,
yes,
the New England Patriots do not have a backup quarterback listed right now.
Do not have a backup.
They do not. They're
Bill Belichick's going to go in and suit up.
Their as of now depth chart has Mac Jones and then a few blank spaces after it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Mac Jones is his own backup.
Yeah.
If he gets hurt, he's got to go in.
Well, they have Brian Hoyer who's on the practice squad.
Right.
And that's what the reports are saying is he's
Well, which is likely what will happen, but no one right now has been. The fact that it hasn't happened and Newton's been released for 2 days now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me wonder if there isn't something else in the works.
Huh.
And also, there was a story that the assistant coaches all go, "Oh, he earned the job." Well, there's no one else to do it.
Maybe there's some news that we haven't heard about. And Deshaun Watson actually is getting cleared, and he's going to go up and play in New England.
Well, maybe. Yeah, he's not going to go to New England. They won't.
I don't. Yeah.
No.
I don't think he would. But to me, it's odd If it's going to be Hoyer, then just name him.
Right. Just name. Yeah. Why wouldn't you name him?
Why would you leave him twisting in the right? Why leave him twisting in the wind? Yeah. So maybe that it makes me think there's something in the works. Might not be a big name. Might just be somebody else. But might not be Brian Hoyer.
Look, Lamar Jackson was 11-4 last year. He threw 26 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Granted, the year before he had 36-6.
Right.
His completion percentage was 64.4, which is what his career average is. And by the way, he also had 1,000 yards rushing. So,
by the way,
yeah, and 7 rushing TDs.
Right.
So he had 10 fumbles. He only lost 4 of them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what Daniel Jones had in the first 2 games. So
Daniel Jones had 4 fumbles and lost 10 of them.
Where does the trip go? Where does the trip go? Is that a turnover or is that just?
I don't really know. If it was in the old Giant Stadium, I would have said it was because of Jimmy Hoffa. But that's
my point.
Did they lose that bowl?
No.
I thought he tripped, but they held on.
He almost lost.
It wasn't as bad as the old butt fumble.
My point being is that I don't think the Giants should.
Arms were running faster than his feet.
I don't think the Giants should go out and draft another young quarterback. I think they should, if they can get somebody in free agency who's going to be in the 6 or 7 years of his prime,
right,
for the next 6 or 7 years, then that's a no-brainer, is it not?
That's the way to go.
And
obviously.
If they have
because what are you going to do? You're going to bring somebody in that's going to take 3 or 4 years to develop,
right,
and then you're going to be losing Barkley, and you're going to be losing Galladay at that point. You're going to be losing Shepard.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So my point is that this draft capital is going to look awfully enticing to the Ravens. Look, he might stay with the Ravens. It's probably the smartest thing for him to do, but. He's the one guy who I could see potentially wanting to maybe move,
right? And
Baltimore being weird enough, I kind of hope he has a little bit of a down season again,
right?
But he won't. I mean, he's a spectacular.
Well, a
player.
Down season for him, right. Let's put it that way. Like
he had
a little less than last year, but still.
The year before, he had 36 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions or something like that. Another 10 rushing touchdowns.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think personality-wise, he's not afraid to go somewhere else.
No, that's what I mean.
Ooh, big thunder and
lightning. I told you it was coming again.
That's the football god saying, "Hey, you're onto something there."
There you go.
That was a good one.
There you go. That's a good one. Well, like you said, the Giants would definitely benefit from somebody that could run around and get out of a pass rush coming at them. So, and their offensive line was just we talked about it earlier this afternoon. Their offensive line, I don't see any difference. I don't know. Maybe we'll wait till next week, first couple games, and see if there's just like
a little bit better, right? I mean, experience, but
it can't be any worse. The problem is there's a lot of question marks and people playing out of position, guys coming back, who's going to play where. I mean, what's their projected starting line? I don't even know what the
I don't even know.
Starting. Yeah, nobody knows.
I don't even know.
Nobody knows.
Couldn't tell you.
Wasn't there like 3 guys technically out of position last year?
And there's 4 guys now, and nobody knows who's going to start.
Right.
So it's just
stupid. Yeah. So, but and they added depth over the last couple of days. They got another couple of players, but they're not starters. But and
Giants making sure no other quarterback wants to come there.
That's right.
Pretty much. Yeah.
When it comes to mediocre at best offensive linemen, the Giants are the deepest.
There you go. Absolutely.
Deshaun Watson loves New Jersey, but he's I'm not going there with that line.
I don't know about that. Well, but he's got the feet for it, though, right?
Well, but you don't want to be running if you don't have to, right? Because you won't have the feet for long.
Running on a 3rd and 7 is different than running for your life every play.
On a Jets note, hey, you know what? They may actually play really well this year. I mean, for the Jets, I don't mean they're going to win the division. I just mean they're going to play better than they've played in the last several years. Yeah.
I think they're going to have more wins than the Giants. Having said that might be 5.
That's what I was going to say. What does that mean exactly?
5-4? Is that what you're thinking?
But they actually released Bless Austin, cornerback Bless Austin. I mean, he was projected to be
starting.
Bless Austin. He was projected to be a starting cornerback, and they released his sixth round pick in 2019.
Sounds like a singer-songwriter.
Yeah, right. Bless Austin. You figure he's a country singer, right?
Yeah.
But no, he was projected to be a starting cornerback. They released him today, so something's up there. But
country gospel singer.
There you go. Did you see the on NFL whole note, if you will, not a half note or a quarter note, a whole note. The NFL Players Association opened an investigation today after Urban Meyer said that the roster cuts that he made as far as Jacksonville went, vaccination status played a factor in his roster cuts. So the Players Association opened up a little investigation into that. So, but what do you think about that?
That's a terrible idea. I mean, it could be a terrible idea depending on the player, but I don't. You probably shouldn't be allowed to do that, but I don't know. He's the coach,
whether you're
right?
allowed to do that or not, he probably shouldn't say he did that.
Yeah, I think it was a bad thing to say. Quite honestly, I think it was a fine thing to do.
Right.
I kind of feel the same.
It's sort of a litmus test for
right.
If you have a certain mentality.
Listen, there might be a situation where something was swirling around, people were sniffing, and he decided to get out in front of the story.
Get out in front of it, yeah. Well, that's possible. But in an unrelated story, it came to pass that Urban Meyer and Javi Baez are actually going to do a sit-down and learn how to talk to and what to say to the press going forward. So I
think Urban Meyer's got a little bit of a leg up on him there. He's been talking to more people in the market he came from than the one he's in now.
This is true. So
either one of us says the better.
Exactly. So anyway,
it's just that in the last one he could have said anything and nobody cared.
Pretty much, yeah. So well, that's pretty much it. I mean, we're like I said, next week we're going to do our NFL kickoff show, so it'll be a lot of fun stuff.
I got one other little thing here.
Sure,
alrighty,
because I have a lot of them. We've sort of been doling these out. This is the weird schedule of the upcoming season. There's a few oddities. Teams playing back-to-back games against the same team, and nothing that's so far on this list that has never happened before.
I haven't even looked at the schedule,
but there's some unusual things. So
I started playing that today, so I'll have it ready for next week.
Here's a little taste of this sort of thing. So the Bears do not.
Nope.
So far, according to the schedule, and we'll have to see what happens with COVID and reschedule during
win any games.
The Bears do not.
Yeah.
Have to play consecutive road games at any point this season.
Back and forth each week.
Only the fourth time since 2010 that has happened.
Back and forth each week.
Yeah.
Schedule oddities. That's what we got to call this segment.
Schedule oddities, yeah. Now, here's the good news for the Bears. I don't really think it's good news for the Bears, but statistically, 2019 Ravens, 2013 Packers, and 2012 Falcons, all of those teams, these were the three previous teams in the past 10 years, ended up winning their division. So Bears are going to bust that streak, I'm sure.
Well, let's hope, right? Because the
at
Giants
least
have the
they will be in a group of teams that, again, could be coincidence.
Right.
Might be something, probably not a huge factor, but interesting to play at home, away, at home, away, at home, away.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this is only the fourth time since 2010 that this has happened.
And I don't know how many times they're like playing on a Thursday night or whatever. But I would think that might be to their advantage to, not maybe play two away games, play a Thursday night game and then
or not have to
play a Sunday and then a Thursday night game.
We'll have to check into that. See if there is like one of the is like there a Sunday home game and then a Thursday away game, because that because it was the opposite way, then it's different. But that's interesting. Right. That's interesting. So
interesting.
You got more of them for next week? More schedule?
Oh, I got a bunch of them.
All right, cool. Good.
Cool. I think they would be overwhelming and meaningless if we just there's like 10 or 12 of them that I could
read them all off. And
what team was the thing with their helmets were different colors? I don't know. So we'll dole them out a little bit.
We'll dole them out a little bit at a time. Cool. Good. All right. Like I said, next week's the NFL kickoff show. We'll have a lot of we're bringing back Beaten by the Coin. We'll have a couple other fun segments, and we'll
quick
do
question. Is the Jets-Panthers game the most exciting game in the NFL Week 1?
I think so.
It's right behind the Giants and Broncos.
It's got a great story, though.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. It's got a great story, and that's where it ends.
Yeah, it might not be great play.
Sam Darnold throws for 795 yards. 16
And Zach
touchdowns.
Wilson
all
throws
season.
Zach Wilson throws for 644,
Right, yeah.
and they lose.
And they lose
120
120 to 118.
No, they lose 8-7. They can't neither team can get in the end zone.
Right. 9-6. There you go.
1,500 yards of total offense.
And they
And
lose
a 9-6
9-6
loss.
5 field goals.
That's the way it'll go. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Yeah. So we'll discuss what'll be the first best game, and we'll also do our preliminary season total picks. Who's going to win each.
Oh God, I got to bust out the old charts again.
Got to bust out the old charts, and you still have the quarter, right?
I do actually.
Please say you have the quarter. All right,
yeah,
good.
I have the quarter.
The Jets are not last in the preseason power ratings.
The Giants are.
No, the Giants are actually ahead of. So the bottom ones are Houston, Detroit, the Jets, Jacksonville, Cincinnati. I don't know. And the Giants, they actually have the Giants ahead of the Eagles and the Broncos and the Panthers. I don't know about that.
A lot of faith in Daniel Jones.
Yeah, well, he only played like 10 minutes in one game, so.
Not even, yeah.
So he's fresh.
Can't believe the Eagles are ranked this
Exciting.
low. I don't think the Eagles are going to be that bad.
Well, I mean, they're probably being looked at as going to be in the basement of the NFC East.
We'll talk about it next week.
Right. So, yeah, we'll talk all about that next week. Awesome.
The basement in the NFC East is always the same. It's like a crawl space. The top and the bottom are about the same.
The top of the NFC East is only about 5 stairs up the basement flight going to the first floor.
The basement is actually like living in the garage.
That's right. Yeah,
exactly.
The basement and the top of the top of the heap are not very far apart.
Not so much.
They're one and the same.
Not so much. Yeah. So, all right. Cool. All right, we'll do that. We'll do that all next week. All right. Folks, we're gonna do a little bit different top 10 tonight, and of course, our top 10 is probably more like a top 15, and it might even be into the 20s.
So a little bit different of a little bit different.
A little bit different of a little bit different. We're kind of in the interim, in the middle between football and baseball. So we figured next week we're doing the NFL kickoff show. It's already September though, so why don't we do a different top 10 list tonight? So we're going to do our top 10 80s bands, and I put the 15 in there because we're actually probably going to do 15 or more.
We spun the wheel. This is what came up.
We picked 80s bands, so that's it. So our top 10 80s bands is our list tonight, and we'll kick it off with I'll read.
One more click on the wheel, and it would have been favorite color.
It would have been colors, yes.
Clear.
Clear would have been number one.
One less click.
Clear is my favorite color.
And we'd be debating greatest
postage stamps?
19th century romantic authors.
Romantic authors, right.
Well, thank God it landed on 80s.
Luckily we missed that, so we got 80s.
That's coming up.
Exactly. Don't miss that one. We'll let you know ahead of time when we're doing that, so you can.
That will be a list of 10.
Tune in. Yeah, absolutely.
No
that will
more.
be a firm 10, maybe.
We might get to 10.
Exactly. It might be a top 3. But in any event, no. Tonight is top 10 80s bands or top 80s bands. We'll just call it top 80s bands. Well, you guys have the list as well, right? I'll
Sure.
I sent the final one to you after the voting from all three of us.
Just read them off.
So we're going to start with number 10. We got a 3-way tie for 10th. And the first one I'm going to let Harry read off because that was his choice. That was his band. So let's go. Let's start with number 10. Harry, read off number 10, please.
Hold on. Let me pull up. Which list are we actually reading from?
Tonight's list order.
Tonight's list order.
It would have been your number 7 band.
Gotcha. Hey, look, this is a band nobody knows about. But I think that they were a band who spanned from actually the late 70s through the 80s, 90s, and into the mid of, the 2015, 2016. So they were around a very long time. They were, for most of their incarnation, a trio from Canada. No, not the one you're thinking of. No, not the other one you're thinking of. And I think they probably influenced every big band to come out of the early 90s, including Nirvana and many others. Mm-hmm. And it's none other than a band called No Means No, right, who
Well ahead of their time.
Well ahead of their time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely pretty amazing. They're credited with kind of being an influence in the start of things like jazzcore and emo and math rock and post-hardcore. They're out of Canada. They're out of a small town called Victoria, Canada. Later, they relocated across the bay there to Vancouver. And they came out of a scene that had a lot of really incredible 1980s punk rock bands, including DOA, and they built their reputation really touring quite a bit in the early days. They started out as a duo, as a bass and drums duo, and Andy Kerr joined the band for most of their 80s run. In fact, all of their 80s run. And then after that, Tom Holliston was their guitarist. But Rob and John Wright are two of there's a lot of great rhythm sections that obviously jump into my list here.
Sure.
And these guys are right at the top of that list. Yeah. And, if I had to suggest one album for people to jump into, it'd probably be Wrong. It's their most popular album. I think a lot of that had to do with timing. There's not a bad song on it. And yeah, while they definitely came into the, the 90s and up until, 5 or 6 years ago when they finally called it quits, I think their best output was in the 80s. And while they're not very well known outside of, maybe punk rock and post-punk, aficionados, they influenced a lot of people. And I don't think we would have some of the drumming that Dave Grohl did with Nirvana if it wasn't for John Wright and No Means No. So yeah. They're incredible. And they're a band that I came to late, sort of late in the game. But they are they're worth checking out without a doubt. Give them a list. They're not so easy to pigeonhole. They're not always easy listening, but they have a great sense of humor mixed into some of their dark comedic lyrical content, right. But incredible musicianship. And definitely one of the bands that I think deserves to be on this list.
There you go. And, tied for number 10, No Means No. Pete, you the second number 10 on the list was your number 9. Why don't you read that one?
Yeah, this is one of the bands that has this. Well, they sort of had a change in format or style, if you will, but that was basically 40 years ago, and they've sort of been able to crank out the same kind of music ever since. And there's not a whole lot of bands that don't really go through a phase of we need to do something different because our fans are getting sick of hearing the same thing. So again, they had a big change, but they've been going ever since. In the 80s, I think kind of their
best album was 1980, right?
80 was their
1980, yeah. And arguably this is, well, I'll just say the band. It's AC/DC.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the 80s. So we're talking about post-Bon Scott era. And again, that brought about something of a change in their style, but not much. But I mean, this was
not much. I mean, it was still
not much. No, maybe not as witty.
Yeah, there was a little bit more.
The lyrics were not.
There was a little.
They didn't have big balls anymore.
Right.
No.
They had shook me all night long.
Exactly.
Yeah, they got really serious with knocking me out with those American thighs.
Yeah. And of course, I think it was a couple years later. For those about to rock, we salute you. So the 80s,
which is a great album.
Yeah, we're talking about kind of the 80s as the heyday of these bands.
Sure.
But this was a testament to, people were hungry for this band to come back, and they had a huge following. I think they never really
left.
Yeah. No, they didn't. But I mean, Bon Scott died and nobody was really sure what was going to go on. And people said, it was one, he was the kind of guy that, and it says about a lot of bands, you can't ever have the same band. Right. There were people that said they should break up, and there were people that said, no, they have to continue. And they came back with a vengeance, and they haven't stopped since. And
nothing will stop them. Even Brian Scott losing his vocal cord,
even losing his voice. Well, and then
go and get Axl Rose.
There you go.
Yeah. So I don't know. They're just
they're amazing.
Yeah, they just keep chugging along.
Keep on moving.
I mean, there's just so many great hooks in these songs. you know. And I mean, You Shook Me All Night Long. I never have to hear that song again. I have heard it enough times in my life, but I will, and I'll probably enjoy it a little bit. But it's just, you know, I don't know. This, I mean, if you had to pick like 10 albums,
right,
that you were stranded on a desert island with, this might be one of them for me.
Back in Black would be one of them.
Back in Black might be one of them.
Right.
And you're right though. The For Those About to Rock was a great album, and that song. I mean, it's you know, it gets very little airplay. I don't think I've heard it more than twice or three times on the radio since it came out in, what was it, 82 or whatever. But
it doesn't get.
I mean, they're sort of the Ramones of hard rock, even though the Ramones were kind of hard rock. They're two bands that were able to take the same sort of formula, but they were so good at it, and there was always a great vocal hook in everything that they did. That I mean, look. The AC/DC's been around for what, 60 years almost?
Yeah.
I mean,
and this is, you've had huge bands, like even a band like Metallica.
Oh yeah.
You know, where they kind of felt like they had to do something new.
Right.
Because they wanted to do something new, but there was a disgruntlement amongst a portion of the fans who said, yeah, we've heard this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started in 1973.
Yeah.
1970, so almost 50 years old.
Yeah. And I mean, there's something sort of incredibly powerful about the fact that they've never deviated from what it is that they do.
Right.
You know, in the 80s, they never did what every other hard rock band did, and they never said we need a power ballad or we need to add a synth player.
I thought You Shook Me All Night Long was their power ballad.
We're going to do a covers album, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and back in the day too, they had such a distinct sound that if you heard a new song that you had never heard before, you knew it was AC/DC.
Well, yeah,
Brian Johnson opened his mouth.
Right, from 75, like High Voltage, TNT, Dirty Deeds, Let There Be Rock,
even back to Bon Scott in the 70s, same thing all the way through.
And then Highway to Hell was the last album with Bon, right?
Right.
Yep.
And then Back in Black, they come back with the new lead singer. It's their biggest album ever. For Those About to Rock, we salute them. And then they just kept doing it. And yeah, it wasn't as popular, but there was still one single that was always going to be on the radio or on MTV, and they were still selling out stadiums.
And they were, and that was it. And I mean, the hair bands kind of took over once it got to the 80s, but they kept chugging along and they kept playing, and they filled that void that all these hair bands had.
Nobody ever
left.
got. If you were a fan of AC/DC, nobody ever got sick of them who was a fan.
No.
You might have moved on to other bands that you start to like more or listen to more, but nobody ever went AC/DC. No.
Oh, they have the most loyal fan following maybe of any band. You know, and yeah, I mean, it was Angus and Malcolm. Malcolm unfortunately passed away. I mean, they've had Cliff Williams playing bass. They've had other bass players, I think, early on, but I think Cliff's been there for a pretty long time. Mm-hmm. Their drummer gets arrested. Well, we got another drummer. You know, Phil. I mean, they've probably had 10 former members in the band, believe it or not. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's Angus and his brother. His brother was and the key to them really musically was that it was so simplistic that it's actually hard to play. Playing AC/DC the way AC/DC sounds on the drums is a skill because it's a pocket thing that you just can't explain to anybody else. Either you have it or you don't. The whole band was a rhythm section, and they were the best at it. Them and the Ramones, they just did it at different speeds.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a great line.
So, all right. So there you go. Also tied for 10.
This list is going to take a long time.
It's going to take a week.
Keep going. We'll fly through.
All right. So the other number 10 tied for number 10, I'll do this one is The Fix. It made our cut at number 10, tied with those bands. And Fix started in 1979, still going today. Obviously not as much as they did back in.
Well, I'm going to see him next week.
Or
2 weeks.
Harry's going to see him in a couple of weeks. I'm thinking about flying out and going with him, but in any event, whatchamacallit, songs like One Thing Leads to Another, Saved by Zero, Red Skies was one of my favorite songs they did. Stand or Fall was a great song too. Yeah. But they started actually in '79 as Portraits for a year, and then they changed the name in '80 to the Fix. And they added a year later.
Good move.
Yeah, a year later they added the extra X. They were just FIX when they switched. But yeah, they whatchamacallit, just I mean, you listen to music from the Fix, it's just like it drips '80s, right? It's just it brings you right back to what you were doing the first time you heard that song.
But there's nothing cheesy about it. I mean,
not at all. Not at all. No, it wasn't '80s cheese by any means.
Yeah.
It was just that sound.
There's some really cool synth sounds and some of their songs, the way they open and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, Reach the Beach was everywhere. That album was everywhere.
I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think people forget that these are the singles that they had. Mm-hmm. Lost Plains, Stand or Fall, Red Skies, Saved by Zero, One Thing Leads to Another, The Sign of Fire, Deeper and Deeper, Are We Ourselves, Sunshine in the Sea, Less Cities, More Moving People, Secret Separation, Built for the Future, Driven Out, Precious Stone, and then they get into the 90s with How Much Is Enough. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a pretty good run.
It's a great run. And that was,
And they had, what was the lead singer's name?
Cy Kiernan.
Cy Kiernan, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Jamie West Orham's the guitarist,
who I think got first time I heard his name, he got recognized. I think he was in a Tina Turner video. Oh. It Better Be Good to Me. I think
Better Be Good to Me. Yeah.
And somebody went, "Hey, that's the lead singer from the Fix."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that gave him some exposure too. Not that they really needed it, but
right. But yeah, they were just it was great music, and they just kept cranking out the hits, and they were all great.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those. I mean, they were good. Like what is that band? 311, is it?
Yep. 311.
I don't personally care for their music, but they had a armload of hits.
Yeah, they did.
And what you don't realize when you see them stacked up, you go, "Oh man, now I remember that song. I know that song. I know that song."
They just played over here the other night, PNC.
Yeah, there's only a couple of their songs I actually like, but
Sunday night actually
had a lot of hits, and the Fix is kind of the same way. That list you just ran down. Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So also number tied for 10, the Fix. So let's bring it to number 9. We got two number 9s.
Number 9.
Harry, do the first one. It would have been your number. It would have been your number 6. Is our number 9 tonight?
Oh, none other than we're going to go across the pond.
Across the pond.
Oh, to Gang of Four, which look. I don't think they were really at their peak for ever, but they were. The reason why I have them on my list is number one, their album Entertainment, which technically came out in '79. Yes, I know. I skewed things a little bit here, but is probably the premier post-punk album of all time, and they influenced so many bands over the course of their career that I had to have them on their list. And I saw them only a couple of years ago. Obviously, Andy Gill passed away last year. And he was the only really original member left in the band, but they were still absolutely incredible. Mm-hmm. And never really a huge band, but their legacy, they influenced everybody from REM and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nirvana. I mean, so many bands. You hear them in bands like The Rapture and Franz Ferdinand and The Killers, and quite honestly, the next band on this list was also sort of taking what they did and sort of making it a little bit more palatable and a lot more pretty.
Right.
But there was something about the funk punk ness of this band that's undeniable. And Entertainment, Solid Gold, and Songs of the Free, they're just Entertainment, and is I think one of the best albums ever made. And yes, technically 79, but I think it sort of slow burned until it definitely was making its way through the early 80s. And Rage Against the Machine, the Jesus Lizard, I mean, his guitar tone alone, this sort of taking a funk guitar and playing it incredibly trebly and with this sort of almost cutting nature of it, along with the incredible rhythm section, They're an amazing band, and go listen to Entertainment. It's one of the best albums ever made.
There you go. Yeah, that's tied for number 9. Whatchamacallit? Gang of Four. All right, I'll since it wasn't on your list, Pete, I'll do number other tied fair. For number 9. As Harry just said, also part of the second British invasion, if you will, the MTV-driven British invasion, would be Duran Duran. Started in 1978. Really got going. Obviously, got cranking in 81 with the release of their self-titled debut album with Planet Earth and Girls on Film. We're talking about Simon Le Bon on lead vocals, obviously. Nick Rhodes on keys. John Taylor on bass. Roger Taylor on drums. And Andy Taylor on guitar. And ironically, none of those Taylors are related by any means. But yeah, they released their second album, Rio, and it just went crazy. And even their third album was Seven and the Ragged Tiger. That was a great album as well. And they just kept cranking out the albums over and over and all through the 80s and everything that they were all over the radio. And each album had 3 and 4 and 5 singles off of it, even more. But they were just it's such a dynamic band, such the sounds that they were putting out there, like Harry said, they took what Gang of Four did and made it a little bit more. I think it was they referred to it as the new romantic scene, and all. But it was just really, 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 really well done music. So,
Harry, there's a band that benefited from the video age.
Oh hell yeah,
more than Duran. I don't know who they are.
I mean, MTV owes Duran Duran everything because they were MTV. I mean, they figured it out before anybody else that if you put really beautiful women on a boat somewhere in the middle of the sea and dress your effeminate band in suits, then you got a hit.
Yeah, that was the whole video. 5 guys on a boat in suits.
5 pretty guys in a suit, and
those were
between them and Spandau Ballet back at the end of the day, and they did the same thing.
Threads though, those guys were wearing some GQ shit, no question.
Oh yeah, but, that's for sure.
Well, and they were a rock band really early on. I mean, one of their more interesting albums to me was after the departure of Andy Taylor. Was Notorious, in which they worked with Nile Rodgers. It's a different type of album, definitely, but it's a great album and some of the best songwriting they ever did.
Yeah, was it Notorious on it, Skin Trade,
right?
And then we saw them that tour, didn't we?
Right, and then don't forget Power Station. I mean, look, these guys were everywhere in the mid '80s, and
I mean, they at one point I remember they were getting because a lot of the young girls really dug Duran Duran.
Oh yeah, they were the new Beatles,
right? I mean, but after a few years, Simon Le Bon wasn't always clean shaven, and he looked like a man. And there were people that were like, I don't want my 13, 14-year-old daughter worshiping this band, which is full of adults now. There was some backlash because they didn't, because they were around 18, 19 when they started, right?
They were young.
I think they were pretty young, and then a few years later they were men, but they kind of still had a lot of that same audience, which was young, around or slightly pre or slightly post-pubescent girls.
Sure. And
we were like, hey, these guys aren't kids anymore. It's not really appropriate. So
they definitely fight Bon Jovi for the Gen X housewife crowd right now.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and Harry, you mentioned the Power Station. Don't forget, like at the same time, those bands like Arcadia too at the time.
Yeah, which was Nick Rhodes' kind of side deal with Simon, which was very synth heavy and a little bit more delicate sounding. But I mean. I mean they were everywhere. You can't. I don't think you can think of the '80s without them. And then they weren't a one-hit wonder. I mean, they were a band that they're still playing, they're still touring, and they still put on a pretty damn good show.
The stuff they did in the early '90s wasn't too bad either. Ordinary World and Come Undone.
Yeah, I mean, Ordinary World was their biggest hit.
Yeah, that's a great song.
I mean that's their biggest hit that they ever had.
That was what, 93?
Yeah,
something like that. But 92, 93. But. And don't forget how they came about with their name too, where that came from.
Right.
Roberto Duran.
Right.
The movie Barbarella.
Yeah.
The doctor. The doctor. Milo O'Shea's character. The doctor was Dr. Durand. So they took the last D off of both Durand. So, but anyway, little useless trivia for you. What the hell?
Yes. What is their middle name, John?
Durand's middle name. That would be S.
S.
Just S. No period. It's just not like Harry S. Truman. It's Durand.
I know you're
S.
going insane because we don't have any middle names to go over today.
But no, that's it. Tied for number 9 with Gang of Four is Duran, and it's apropos that they're together at number 9 too. So, all right, Pete, why don't you tell us who number 8 is?
Number 8 has a middle name. I don't know what the hell it is though.
I don't know what it is. It was not too far from me either. So.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of connection there too. It's the boss. It's Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I don't know. When was the best Bruce? Was it Born to Run? Was it Born in the USA? Was it?
I think Nebraska.
The Rising. Nebraska
was what? Nebraska was just before Born in the USA, right? It was like 82.
Yeah.
Was it even in the 80s? Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing: we talk about heyday of the 80s. So,
yeah, Springsteen definitely.
The River, 1980, underrated. Right. Nebraska, 82, arguably his best album.
Right.
Born in the USA, the most commercial.
Maybe the biggest album of the 80s.
Probably. And, of course, spawning one of the most misunderstood, the title track.
Right.
Misunderstood songs ever. And then Tunnel of Love in 87, which is an album that I am very fond of, despite I know
Me too.
A lot of people kind of went, "Oh, what is this country bullshit?" And he's wearing a string tie.
Right. But it's not the E Street Band.
Right. It's Bruce Springsteen. And look, Dylan took shit for going country, and
I don't think it was country.
That was the perception, though. That was the perception.
Yeah. That album reminded me of a band called David and David.
Yes,
who had a big hit in the 80s called Boomtown. That's what that album reminded me of. Like, I feel like he was listening to them a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you listen to the lyrics of those songs, right, he was going through his divorce.
Yeah,
there's a lot of heartbreaking stuff in there, and there's this whole kind of storyline of what he's feeling, and sometimes that best music comes out when musicians are in pain.
Sure.
And that's an album it's one of my favorite albums of his is Tunnel of Love. But obviously a huge amount of output, a huge amount of success.
Yeah, everywhere.
And, look, Bruce was still Bruce, right? I mean, he still kind of is Bruce.
He's one of those guys who while I admire his music, and there's some of it that I absolutely really like, I have a greater admiration for the person than I do for his music. I mean, I just think he's a good guy, and he's obviously been doing it since 74, 75, something like that.
Yeah.
And he slugged, he was one of these guys who kind of slugged it out for a while in the club scene, mostly in New York, and
I mean, he started like Cafe Y even.
Right.
He started playing there.
It wasn't immediate. He did it the old fashioned way, by playing live shows. Mm-hmm. And obviously he had a pretty good band behind him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still does.
Well, I think, I think it was the Rising tour. Don and I went to see him over there somewhere in Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting because half the crowd was us old folks that were singing Born to Run and some of the other 80s stuff.
10th Avenue.
With Bruce fans, there's older folks than new old folks.
Right. But the other half of the crowd was younger folks that, were more into The Rising and, Ghost of Tom Joad and stuff like that. So it was very interesting to just kind of look around. And I think I got a pretty good contact buzz. I didn't actually have to purposefully inhale any marijuana because I know I was feeling good.
Well,
but it was interesting to look around and see this group of young people over here singing, knowing every word to songs that I didn't know any of the words to. And then Don and I and a few other old people scattered around us belting out the oldies while the youngsters kept their mouths shut. So I thought that was a really cool experience.
Not that I want to make a big point of this, but you mentioned like what kind of a guy he is and stuff like that. He tells, I don't know if you've seen any of his the Broadway, the show he does, and some of the storytelling he does and so forth. I'll just say this really quick. He talks about, if anybody listening, if you've seen it, he talks about some of his upbringings and in the music scene and everything else, and some of his early influences. And one of the things he used to do when he was a teenager, he used to follow this band, the Motifs, around, and they played a lot in Asbury Park. And they were a really big influence on him, and he idolized to a point the lead singer Walter. Loved the style, and it was a big influence on him and everything else. Walter and his brother Ray were both in the band. Ray was the guitarist. They both got drafted and went to Vietnam. Ray came back, and Walter did not. And whatchamacallit. So he talks about Walter a lot in his show. And it just so happens that Walter had two young boys before he obviously left and went to Nam. One was a baby. One was a couple years old. One was a baby. And the baby is actually the Beer Samurai on the Craft Beer Podcast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and whatchamacallit. So, yeah, Walter Cichon, and it's David Cichon is the Beer Samurai on the Craft Beer Podcast. But this past Saturday would have been their father's 75th birthday. And Bruce actually got in touch with them and had them come, and they came to the show on Saturday night, and he did a tribute to him because it would have been his birthday. So that's one of the things this kind of guy is, and stuff like that. I just wanted to bring that up. I figured this was a forum to do that. Dave never talks about it. He doesn't. If you bring it up, he'll talk about it if you bring it up to him, but he never starts it. So I just thought this was the time to mention that because it's part of the Log Room family, if you will. So anyway, there you go. Anything else on Bruce? And by the way, Harry, to your point, his middle name, he's Bruce Frederick Joseph Springsteen.
I knew we'd have something
There we go.
I mean, I don't want to say anything humorous after that, but I mean, Springsteen's known for his 3-hour show. 1 hour of it is him talking.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I do remember getting a little tired at that show.
Pretty much.
2.5 hours would have been good. 3:15 was just like, oh.
So there you go. Number 8 on tonight's list is Bruce Springsteen. Harry, why don't you tell us who Mr. 7 is tonight?
Mr. 7 is another relatively unknown band to many, but another influential band out of California named the Minutemen out of San Pedro. Mike Watt, D. Boone, George Hurley. They were part of the SST family along with Black Flag. I think they were the second album ever released on SST Records. They were lumped in and toured a lot with a lot of the hardcore scene that came out of California, playing with bands like Black Flag and Husker Du and touring with those guys. But they were really their own thing. I don't really know how to describe the Minutemen other than I think they were the most democratic trio in rock and roll. And in that, it's like everybody is an incredible player. They all are doing their own thing. They're most of their work was really known for these very short, sort of concise songs. And they just put on some of the best live shows you've ever seen. I unfortunately never had a chance to see them live because by the time I had even heard of them, D. Boone had passed away. But I've seen Mike Watt many, 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 many times, including him playing with George Hurley and Firehose and other accolades. But their album Double Nickels on the Dime is one of the best albums ever made. And if you're looking for, top 10 punk albums, and I hate that term because I don't really know what it means, but if there's ever been more of a DIY top 10, I mean, no, yeah, what punk means, because I
don't think we know what top 10 means. That's the
but I think what punk means to them is just doing it DIY, and there's never been a band that's embodied that more. And look, Mike Watt is so beloved that at the height of another term I fucking can't stand, and at the height of the grunge movement, he got Dave Grohl and Eddie Vedder to get in a van with him and tour. They were probably two of the biggest rock stars in the world at that time. But they went on tour with them, and I think it was 94, 95, something along those lines. Anyway, the Minutemen, an unknown band who's severely underrated, but I think that they were incredibly influential on almost any band that's come since, and a band that was influenced by bands like Wire and Gang of Four, and continued in that tradition of kind of blending multiple styles of music into something incredibly unique and something that is all their own. So check them out, the Minutemen.
Absolutely. There you go. And that's tonight's Mr. 7.
Mr.
7. Number 7 tonight on the list. All right. We'll jump back. Pete, he was number 1 on your list.
And number 1 in your heart.
Number 1 in your heart. There you go. So why don't you take number 6 tonight?
He left.
Hey, you got to unmute yourself there.
Yeah, sorry. a little burpy today.
Little burpage.
The Minutemen. Nobody gets it. So, listen, I looked at this list, and then I kind of looked at influence and tried not to put mere success too much into the ranking system or whatever. Kind of took the scandals and the personality out of it, which would have otherwise eliminated our number 6 because it's Michael Jackson.
There you go.
So,
but you can't talk 80s music without talking Michael Jackson.
You can't. It's
or 60s or 70s music.
Yeah,
or 70s or some 90s, and yeah, exactly. So
it's 81 was 40 years ago, right? So, we're talking between 30 and 40 years ago. This was kind of, for me, his heyday. I mean, Off the Wall was technically in 1979, but it was late 79. It was still getting plenty of play.
There was more airplay for Off the Wall in 1980.
And I think his best album.
I wouldn't argue with that. I wouldn't argue with that. Thriller, obviously the most commercially successful and all that.
Maybe the most commercially successful album of all time, right?
Period. Not just for him.
Does it still hold that record?
Well, I mean, at the time it definitely was. At the time it was,
yeah, and by far too. And that was 82. And then another great album was Bad in 87.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Dangerous was in 91, so kind of outside that scope. But just a ridiculous talent and sort of the epitome of, if you want to use the word genius, marked by weirdness. That's seems to be often something of a tortured soul inside of really, really talented people. It seems to me anyway, especially in music, whether it's, something like Michael and his past and his kind of his self-loathing, which has sort of been documented, and whether or not he was a pedophile or whatever. I don't want to get into all that, but just sometimes there's, there seems to be, something of a strangeness and abnormality to people who produce great music. And Michael Jackson produced a lot of great music, and say what you want, the king of pop and all that. Mm-hmm. But everybody kind of loved something that he was doing. It wasn't just little girls. And he was, I mean,
you're right.
If you're going to rank the top, 5 musical artists ever.
And I mean,
know who you put above him.
And I think if a lot of other people were doing this list, even Rolling Stone or somebody, he would probably be, maybe he'd probably fight for number 1 on this.
Sure, I don't think there's,
I mean, look, Thriller goes down as one of the, not only the most successful commercially, but one of the most successful critically acclaimed albums of all time.
I mean, I think at one point or another, almost every single track on that album was a single.
Right. Or if it wasn't, it was still being played on the radio.
Right.
Yeah.
And he benefited a little bit from a lot from the video age too.
Well, I mean, Thriller was the first movie video.
Right. But I mean,
and he definitely appealed to young. I mean, only a young audience is going to like some guy with one glove and bedazzled shoes, dance. I mean,
I loved him. It was the dancing. I loved him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He took something from everybody. He was a little James Brown, a little, Liberace, and a whole lot of Michael Jackson.
A whole lot of Michael Jackson.
You watch his videos to see what moves he was going to make. What was he going to do? As much as for the music, and
I mean, when he moonwalked, it was probably bigger than the actual moonwalk.
Yeah. And really a lot of different styles.
Yeah.
Not only from album to album. I mean, yeah, okay, all pop music, if you want to say that, but a harder edge to some of it, but and within an album too, he was really experimenting with a lot of, kind of different stuff, all sort of under the heading of the king of pop, pop, because he was the king of pop.
Sure.
But there was you run through an album, and you'll hear a lot of kind of different stuff there, and
absolutely
bringing in Eddie Van Halen to play a guitar solo and stuff.
Exactly.
That was a fucking stroke of genius.
That was very, very smart. I think
he was huge.
I mean, Quincy Jones had a lot to do with a lot of that stuff too, and
okay.
I mean, it was a lot of Michael Jackson.
Okay, yes, Eddie Van Halen played the guitar solo. Okay, but this is something that I think goes underappreciated because that riff in that song is pretty incredible, and that's all Steve Lukather, who played guitar and bass on that album.
I was just you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to say you gotta owe it to Quincy Jones had a lot to do with it, but he also brought in Steve Lukather to play that main theme throughout that song.
And Steve Porcaro and Jeff Porcaro were playing on this as well.
It was Toto and Van Halen behind Michael on that song.
Van Toto.
Van Toto.
But
Jackson Van Toto.
But the melding of those two styles and with a huge personality,
it was huge. I mean, that video was huge. Everything,
right? Yeah.
Billie Jean, Human Nature, Beat It. I mean, it's unbelievable.
If you listen to Weird Al,
pretty young thing.
Weird Al did "Eat It," I think. Right, was the parody.
Right.
"Eat It" was the parody,
and I think it was Dave Davies who fucking rips a way hot solo on that song. Not a parody, in my opinion.
Right.
The solo, at least.
Yeah, he did.
But, and then you say that, and half the people kind of...
Ray Davies from the Kinks played on a Weird Al?
No, Dave Davies.
Dave Davies.
And people go, who's Dave Davies? And you go, the Kinks. And they'd go, Ray Davies? You go, no, his brother.
Dave Davies played on Eat It.
Played the solo. On
and I did not know that.
Yeah, and it's fucking ripping, too. It's really good. So...
I thought while I liked the parody "Eat It," I actually prefer the parody "Fat" of "Bad," the parody of "Bad."
that
was pretty funny. That one was pretty good.
Yeah, it's got good dance.
My butt is wide. Yeah, it's pretty.
So
good.
there you go.
I wasn't going to continue singing it. I was just saying.
Mr. Six, Michael Jackson. Love him, hate him. His music.
Actually,
pretty awesome.
According to Wikipedia, the famous guitar solo originally performed by Eddie Van Halen was reproduced by Weird Al Yankovic's producer, Rick Derringer. It gets even weirder.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, listen, I might be having a Mandela effect.
He probably played rhythm guitar on it.
Maybe Dave Davies played rhythm guitar, and
I might be having a Mandela.
But there you go, Rick Derringer played it. There you go.
That's even better.
All right.
Dave Davies and Rick Derringer in the same recording session.
Yeah, with
Weird Al.
Exactly. But in any event, I'm just going to make a note here. There we go. I'm going to talk about that later. Anyway, all right, that's number 6, Michael Jackson. We'll move on to number 5. We got a tie for number 5, and I will do. I'll do the first one because it was on both mine, and it was actually on all 3 of our lists. So, and that would be REM. REM founded in 1980, so right at the top of the decade. There was Michael Stipe, Peter Buck, Mike Mills, and Bill Berry. Bill Berry, yeah. And whatchamacallit, they just the album after album after album they released, as part of the alternative rock or whatever. But
I think they created college rock. I mean,
they definitely created college rock.
College rock radio, with the exception of maybe one other band that's on this list, was chock filled with bands that were already sounding like REM.
Sure. Their first single, "Radio Free Europe," was their first single. But yeah, they're just you're absolutely right. They definitely created college rock, and they just like went. I mean, when they released in what was it 80? They probably had the most success into the 90s.
Right.
But they're at the beginning of the 90s, when of course because Losing My Religion just charted them. But the college rock phase that they were going throughout the 80s was just amazing.
Yeah.
I always I thought this was funny too. They when they came up with the name REM, right? You ever hear what some of the names they were considering prior to using REM? No. I'm assuming you didn't, right? One was
I'm assuming you're going to tell us.
Oh, sure, absolutely. One of them was Negro Eyes. Another one was Twisted Kites. But this was the best one. Cans of Piss.
That was already taken, and I've seen them, and they're pretty good.
Were they around in the late 70s?
Van Morrison cover band, right?
That's right.
Cans of Piss.
They're actually not a band. It's just what you see at the roadside Hanukkahs.
They're great.
Yeah.
Depends the can they use, though.
Well, I mean, this is one band that could be on the list for the 80s and the 90s.
Absolutely. No, this could be on. It's definitely makes this list, but it's. Is that you?
That's my doorbell. Somebody's probably left a package.
Oh, I got you. A little Amazon action there.
Something.
But whatchamacallit? Yeah, definitely for the 80s, and it could very well be on a 90s list too. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, to me, their best output. I mean, there wasn't a bad album in it. Murmur, Reckoning, Fables of the Reconstruction, Life's Pageant, Document, and Green were all in the 80s, and obviously they changed pretty dramatically after that. But
sure,
their biggest success was in the early 90s. But Document and Green, those albums before it led up to that. I mean, they were already playing arenas by the time Green came out. I mean, it's crazy. Document is still one of my favorite. I mean, I could put on any of those first 5 or 6 albums and just you sort of forget just how good they were.
Yeah, I think Green is probably my favorite. It's certainly the most listened to REM album.
Yeah, and it was a little harder and a little bit more rock oriented. It's Orange Crush and things like that.
And it was kind of weird.
Well, those Reckoning, Fables of the Reconstruction,
Hair Shirt, and it was what's the other one?
Pop song. Stand was on there, which was a big
hated it.
Yeah, so did I. I mean, this is one of those bands that their biggest hits I've always really with the exception of Losing My Religion, which I actually kind of like that song. But if somebody puts on Stand or what's the other one? Shiny Happy People. I want to kill people. It's very rare that a band that I like so much has a couple songs that I just can't stand.
Yeah,
and if you really want to annoy me, then get the yakety yaks from the B-52s to sing backup on it. They don't really fucking hate it.
I wasn't on Green, or maybe it was. No, it was on something else. Their version of Harry Chapin's "Me and Honey,"
right?
That's a great version of that song.
Right.
With what's her name on the
true
backing vocals. Kate Pearson, I think it was. Yeah, she. I don't know. She for whatever it was, reason she went through a kind of a phase where she was everywhere for a little while, right?
Yeah,
and REM had something to do with that.
Absolutely.
Well, the B-52s were huge too, and then in an era of.
Was it Love Shack that drilled their sort of mini resurgence, and then
it
right, and then she sang
that whole album. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, I mean they were interesting looking, very 80s looking, perfect for MTV.
Sure,
over the top, Well,
I was going to say those albums you mentioned before. They were like from 84 to 88. They released an album every year. They released a new album.
And that was what a lot of these bands did, because it was back then the labels sort of gave you some backing. They gave you some time to grow, and it was record an album, tour, record an album, tour, record an album, tour, record an album, tour, repeat. And a lot of the bands on this list are where they're at because they were able to persevere that.
They would do that, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I also feel like, particularly in the late 80s, and into the early 90s, maybe even a little bit in the early 90s, it became easier for people to get access to new music. There's a lot of bands that wouldn't have gotten signed and recorded and produced and released that were now getting released, whether it was on a smaller label or, somebody taking a chance on them. And if you didn't come out with a new album for 3 years, chances were you were going to be replaced by a new sound. So,
Well, and REM REM.
I don't think
opened the
REM
door.
would have been replaced, but
No, but REM opened the door for what is essentially started as college rock, but really has become sort of adult contemporary rock music. I mean, there are entire stations built around bands that tried to be REM.
yeah.
I mean, there wouldn't be, we would not know of Toad the Wet Sprocket if it wasn't for REM.
REM, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they sort of opened the door for an entire indie alternative rock
sort of a new genre. By the way, did you ever hear their version of Rock and Roll All Night?
By Kiss?
No, Toad the Wet Sprocket's cover.
Toad the Wet Sprocket's version of Rock and Roll All Night.
No, but
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I might have. I mean, and I like Toad the Wet Sprocket.
It's on one of those. It's on one of those, cover albums where they
where they run out of original music and
a bunch of not them. It's not their album. A bunch of bands. Oh, this
tribute album.
A tribute album. I forget what the name of it is, but it's a pretty cool track.
I'll have to check that out.
I'll have to listen to that too.
Yeah,
that's awesome. All right, well there you go.
It's exactly what you'd expect.
Right. Hopefully, Natalie Merchant singing backup.
I don't think so. Maybe though. All right, number 5, Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Number 5, Toad the Wet Sprocket.
And number 4, Trickster.
There you go, Trickster. Oh my god. Number 5, REM. Also tied for number 5. Pete, why don't you take this one?
Oh, I don't know. I gotta look at the list. Must be somebody that I like.
Would you like me to?
Van Halen. I think I've heard of them.
I think you've heard of them. Yeah. I could take them too. It's up to you. It's fine.
Listen,
go for it. We're all going to talk about it anyway, so you take it.
They're Van Halen, it's Eddie, and it's Alex and it's David Lee, who in his heyday was. Look, I've seen both versions of the band, and David Lee was a better frontman than Sammy. Yeah. He was more entertaining. Mm-hmm. Much worse singer.
Oh yeah, Sammy blows them away vocally, but
they were both around in the '80s, and they both. I mean, they had more success commercially. With Van
Hagar. Van Hagar was more successful.
Van Hagar,
but listen, this was my sister, who's 4 years older than me, and she was into Van Halen, so she turned me on to them. I knew who they were before anybody else, which is the case of a lot of music that she and her friends were listening to while I was hiding around the corner trying to ogle her hot high school friends as like an 8th grader or a 7th grader, and listening to music that they were listening to.
There you go.
So I was onto Van Halen right from the start, and I was the guy amongst all my friends who recognized Eddie's guitar instantly in Beat It.
Well, yeah.
And I went, "That's Eddie Van Halen," and everyone went, "Who?" And I went, "Eddie Van Halen." And then a couple people knew who he was and said, "No, it's not." I said, "Yes."
He's the guy who's responsible for making music unlistenable for 20 years, but yes.
And so
every time I see somebody do this, I want to break their fingers.
Well, you're not a big fan of the finger tapping?
Oh God.
Yeah,
I mean,
did you try it on the bass once? Though?
Well, he's not the first guy to do it, but he made it popular and reinvented.
Well, then everybody did it better than everybody else. That's the thing.
Yeah, but then he
did it in the context of songs.
Then you had guys that were doing 2 and 3 fingers all, and it became a caricature of itself.
Right.
But always one of my favorite bands. And listen, the reunion. What was the album they did a few years ago back with David Lee? One good song on it. Pretty decent hooks, but an interesting. If you listen to that album, Harry, you might. Well, both of you probably appreciate this. The thing I noticed about it is just the production is all the same right across.
Sure.
The sound is just the same sound for every song. There's no variation. No.
Sure.
But Stay Frosty's a pretty cool song.
What's
one of my favorite bands.
What's interesting about Van Halen again is that their debut album was a pretty big hit. Then they kind of album-wise didn't have the strongest albums. They were still building themselves as a great live band and opening up for a lot of big acts, and obviously they were gaining a lot of notoriety, but they were given
great albums.
Well, they went the route of doing cover songs, which kept them afloat for a while, doing cover songs, really great versions of those cover songs. And then, finally 1984 was enormous. I mean, it was everywhere. And there's a few songs on that album that absolutely fucking drive me insane. But there's also some that are just timeless classics. But
Jump's one of your favorites, right?
Jump is horrible.
Yeah, okay. All right, fine.
I mean, it's horrible. It is their shiny happy people.
It's their shiny happy people, right?
But who am I to say anything? That's their most beloved song.
Well, I got to tell you, I actually saw the Diver Down tour right before 1984 came out. I saw the Diver Down tour, and about halfway through the concert, David comes up front of the stage on the mic, and he says, "We're going to play you something we've been working on. It's going to be on the next album." And they played Panama. So the first time I ever heard the song Panama was live before they even released it.
Right.
So that was kind of cool.
When was the last time you heard Michael Anthony's bass in a recording?
Once they filled it up with Jack Daniels, it was no good.
Right.
Exactly.
But no, you're absolutely right though. That debut album is 43 years old right now. It's 1978,
and it's really raw.
It's really raw, and it's probably, has their most amount of hits off of any album.
Well, 1984.
No, I think
tons of hits.
Tons of hits off of 84, but there was even more, at least as many or close to as many.
And then the album they did with the first album they
5150 with Sammy Hagar
was huge. All over the radio.
Yeah, that was.
And look, I listened to those songs and the craftsmanship that went into them, and I'm like, these are pretty amazing songs. It's not my cup of tea. Essentially, but I've never been a Van Halen guy, but I listened to the Sammy Hagar's, and I remember they were all over MTV too with live clips from that era.
Sure.
And they were maybe the band as a band that was the best they ever played. Sure. Was with Sammy Hagar. Yeah. Sure.
Well, the other thing too, I was going to say one of my favorite Van Halen tracks was actually off of Fair Warning. It was So This Is Love, and you rarely hear that song, but it was
which sounds like Kiss to me.
A little bit.
For some reason, I could hear Kiss doing that.
A little bit. Song. Yeah, I'll give you that definitely. But yeah, so yeah, just a staple of the '80s, if you will, is Van Halen, and that's our other tied for number 5 tonight. Yeah. Harry. Nice. Harry, bring us to number 4.
Number 4 is a band that, thank goodness they got back together. Maybe, I think a band that was forgotten in the '80s and kind of gained notoriety after they had broken up, and were also then shoved into the spotlight because the band that's is credited for bringing rock and roll back to the masses in 1992. Was obviously heavily influenced by him, and I'm talking about the Pixies. And this is an incredible band, a band that sort of had a very, very, very unique sound. And when it comes to any sort of alternative music, I think paved the way for a lot of bands that came after them. But their main output was in the 80s. And, they're back together again, minus Kim Deal and with the other 3 original members in the band, and they're still going strong. And I've seen them. I've never saw them in their early incarnation because they really weren't around that long. Right. But live, they are one of the best bands I've ever seen. And it's great because they're a formula that you never would think would work, yet hidden behind all of their sort of oddity is really great songs. Yeah. And that's what really, I think that they each in their own right in the Pixies did something that was incredibly unique. And I think that when you look at Joey Santiago and Frank Black Francis, whatever you want to call him, and David Lovering and Kim Deal, they were all doing something really interesting on their respected instruments together, and it worked that way. And look, there wouldn't have been Nirvana, Radiohead, the Smashing Pumpkins, Weezer, any band that sort of came, that falls under the moniker of alt rock or alt pop. There wouldn't be any of them without the Pixies. They sort of invented it in some ways.
Pretty much.
And I think they came around in the mid '80s and they were done by 1989. So, yeah, Bossa Nova and Trop Le Monde came out, but their early, their third and fourth albums, I think, are absolutely incredible. And Surfer Rosa, Doolittle, they're late '80s into the early '90s. I have them in the '80s, but only because they were gone by 1991. By the time all of the bands that were reaping the rewards of what they had sort of laid the foundation for, they were done. And, they're back. Their new albums aren't nearly as good as what their early ones were. But live, they're incredible. And if you have a chance to go see them, I would go see them. They're one of the best live bands I've ever seen.
There you go. All right. That's number 4 on our list. Would be the Pixies. I'll take number 3. We got a two-way tie for number 3.
All right.
All right. Do you? I think Harry and I are going to tag team the other one of the ties, and since I haven't done one yet, in a few, I'll start with
do both of them. Do both of them.
I'll start it. All right. The first tie for number 3 is Prince. Prince Rogers Nelson, to be exact.
I knew there'd be a middle name.
You had to have it, yeah.
And a last name in this case, too.
And a last name, exactly. But yeah, Prince is.
Imagine if he went with Prince Nelson.
You can't talk. Here's another guy. You can't talk about the '80s without talking about Prince and some of the things he did, and especially even if for nothing else, if he only released Purple Rain and no other music in the '80s, he'd still be on this list.
Kind of did.
Was just, there's a few other things.
Yeah.
They say he pioneered the Minneapolis sound. Whatever that is. I guess it's Prince's sound is the Minneapolis sound. But,
I think the replacements in Husker Du would tend to.
It
was him and Morris Day and the Time and all those other
definitely,
new R&B bands that were coming out.
Absolutely. But what we've got one of the things that was always interesting is what it was in 1993, and he changed his name to a symbol. And it was the artist formerly known as
Prince. Was it that early?
Yeah, 80 in 93.
93.
93. Yeah. He was. It was a contract dispute with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
They told him they owned his name. They owned Prince. They owned the name and the moniker Prince. So he changed his name to. He left. He got out of his contract, left Warner Brothers, and changed his name to a symbol. And then, right around I guess maybe 98, maybe it was like 5 years or so that he was TAFKAP, the artist formerly known as Prince, or just the artist, whatever. But yeah, so just the music he wrote and the things people don't even a lot of people don't even think about it. He was actually a pretty damn good guitarist too.
Well, incredible guitarist, and he wrote
incredible musician. Period.
And his biggest hits were performed by other people.
Absolutely, yeah.
His influence on the '80s didn't stop there. I mean, it's
just not just a performing artist, just a songwriter. Period. Was insane.
He wrote songs for people. Look, I would say that in the '80s there was quite a bit of output for Prince. Dirty Mind, which is sort of I think it's one of his best albums. Sort of a stripped down version. Mm-hmm. 1999 was huge, which is right before Purple Rain.
Which I think 1999 I thought was a better album than Purple Rain. But.
Yeah. And then a couple of stinkers in there, but then the double album in 1987, Sign of the Times, which to me is by far his best work.
Yeah, that was really good.
An amazing amalgam of sounds on that. And but yeah, I mean, Purple Rain was like there were people who hated him because of Purple Rain.
Right.
Well, but
because it was commercial and it was so successful and blah.
Well, but he was a genius because much like Michael Jackson, I mean, Thriller, remember the original video for Thriller? Mm-hmm. It was like 20 minutes long, Yep. He said, well, screw that. I'm going to make an entire movie and round it around this soundtrack. Yeah. And it was it's a movie that you can it's a good watch. There's hot chicks in it and good music. Apollonia jumps into the healing waters of Lake Minnetonka. So I mean, the acting is terrible, but he had the juice to be able to do that. But it was incredibly popular because of 1999. Yeah.
And he did something on that album, and I would safely say, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I can probably guess that it's true. He did something that no other hit single has ever done before with on that album with When Doves Cry. There was no bass on that song whatsoever. Just
the Doors.
Everything by the Doors. Yeah, but there's bass in the keyboards. There's no bass at all on that song. There's no bass notes. Period. No matter how it's being played, there's no bass notes.
Like when doves cry. Ding, ding, ding.
Exactly. No bass at all. So it's
Yeah,
just
like
drums, keyboards, and guitar. That's it.
Everybody has their faults.
You can sort of like pick out songs in that album and go, yeah, I don't like the way that sounds.
Right. So there you go.
But altogether, it was
altogether.
Again, you can't look at or listen to 1984 without thinking of the movie.
No.
Maybe if you're of a later
1990, just those two albums alone, 1999 and Purple Rain. It's funny. I was looking through my records the other day, and I think I have a copy somewhere of Purple Rain, or I don't know where it is. But the only thing I found on vinyl of Prince was a single for Little Red Corvette.
Right.
Which was a great song.
It was a good song. It was a very good song.
Well, if you haven't listened to Sign of the Times,
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean,
I imagine you have. But
that's such a good album.
To me, it's fucking.
Look, Prince is one of those artists, much like the Grateful Dead, or I don't know. If you hang around with musicians, you're going to have one or two who are going to make you listen to all of this.
Right. Right.
So,
exactly.
But of course, having said that,
I've heard it all.
There's also an awful lot of garbage.
Well, he was incredibly prolific. I mean,
and not all of it was good.
Well, he just put out. I mean, look, yeah. I mean, he had an audience, and he realized the only way I can keep up with record sales is to do 3 albums a year. Or 2 I mean, in '96 he did 2 albums. In '98 he did 2 albums. In '99 he did 2 albums. In 2001. 2002 and 2003, he had 4 albums. He had 3 albums in 2004, another one in 2006, 7, 2 in 2009, 2 in 2014, and 2 in 2015. I mean, Frank Zappa gets tired reading that list.
I gotta love it, but well. It's
sad that, obviously his passing. I mean, it's
been 5 years now. Yeah.
It's incredible. And I never had a chance to see him live.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I wish I could have.
Yeah,
and it's been said that there's a ton of material in a vault at his house.
Sure.
Is, yeah.
Never released, never worked with anybody on, nothing. Just nobody will ever hear it.
Yeah,
somebody works on it.
Friend John to see him at the Orange Dome.
No, nice.
Yeah.
In Syracuse?
I think it was yeah, we went because he went to school there. So we saw the Police there and we saw Prince there. Both excellent shows.
And look, I like to basically his early band early on was Morris Day and the Time. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but those guys are incredible and maybe one of the most underrated bands of the 80s. And Morris Day is one of the most incredible characters. And I think he sort of saves Purple Rain in the movie.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
They were incredible. They were a big influence on him as much as he was influencing the scene.
Exactly.
They were a little older, I think, and definitely were taking his music and doing something with it that very few bands could.
Yeah, when we had a party in the lounge in college at the end of the hall, the Morris Day was a staple on the soundtrack for the party. No question.
Such a great band. Such a great band.
There you go. All right. So tied for number 3. The first tie for number 3 is Mr. Prince Rogers Nelson. All right. I'll start off, and I know we're going to tag team this one, but I'll start off with our other number 3. It was a band formed in Canada by 3 guys. It was went to school together. Gary Lee Weinrib, Alexander Zhivajinovich, and John Rutsey formed a band.
Two Jews and a Rutsey.
There you go. There you go. And whatchamacallit? Well, a little after they recorded their first album. I mean, they did a lot of stuff on the late '60s and early '70s when they were coming up together. And then when they were right around when Alexander and Gary were 21, the year they were turning 21. Anyway, they released their first album. And John Rutsey was the drummer. He left, and then they got themselves another drummer, and that other drummer was Neil Peart. And Gary Lee Weinrib is Geddy Lee, and Alexander Zhivajinovich is Alex Lifeson. That would be the band Rush, and that's why I'm wearing the shirt, obviously, jersey to be exact. But yeah, they 74. They kicked off their first album, and Neil was actually the drummer on the tour. Didn't play. The only thing he didn't do was play on the album. their career spanned obviously all the way up until I think the last tour they did was 2015, if I recall. And saw them many times, and their sound changed through the years. It definitely changed. It was definitely one sound in the early on. They changed into the late 70s. They changed a little bit, added some keyboards. They had some of those long, drawn out theme type songs.
Anthems
about
space,
and with different movements.
And concept
albums. Yeah, I mean it's all prog rock, right? So it's all concept anyway. So then they got into the 80s and it was a little more synth heavy. Into the 90s, they kind of went back into the roots of just the guitar and bass, and then they took a little time off in the late 90s and kicked it off again in the early 2000s and released another few albums, and just great stuff, great material. And I mean, like I could talk all day on it, and I'm gonna let Harry take a couple of minutes here, and because I know we saw about 20 of the concerts that I saw together, but yeah, you can define, you can't pick like throughout the course of their career, they and while the band was going, they definitely changed their sound a lot, but you can always tell it was them. When you have one of the most prolific lyric writers writing lyrics for you, who also happens to be like pretty much the best drummer ever, and you have a music writing tandem in Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, and that music can gel together. It's just amazing what they can do. And song after song, year after year, album after album, it was just amazing stuff. Harry?
Yeah, I mean, look, when they first started, they were sort of a hard rock band, which was very derivative.
Led Zeppelin.
People thought their first single was the new Led Zeppelin song. Yeah. I'm a Rush fan, but I'm honest when in calling out some of their excess at times, and some of the stuff. Yes, Neil Peart was a great songwriter, but he also wrote some really cheesy shit along the way. The reason why I say all this is that I will argue till the end of time that their best work was from 1980 to 1985. Mm-hmm. They finally, I think, came into their own on Permanent Waves, which was 1980. And then, which I also think is one of the best albums ever made, period, and definitely a top 10 album of the 80s. Yeah. And then they made their best album. And I'm sorry, it's their best album. There's not a bad song on it. There's only 7 songs. It took a little bit of their old stuff and a lot of their new stuff. And they became a band that wrote fantastic songs that took all the chops and parts and riffs and licks and everything else that made them such a players band in the 70s and put it into one album, which is one of the best albums ever made. And I thought Signals, while it lacked a little bit of the engineering and sound dominance that Moving Pictures had, is still another great album. And then they moved even further into a sound that was influenced by a lot that was going on at the time. And I still think it's one of their best albums, in Grace Under Pressure. Mm-hmm. After that, it's hit or miss. The keyboards dominated. They became, to me, they started to sound, they were being influenced by a lot of fusion and jazz bands, and they lost me. Mm-hmm. Did I still go see them? Sure. Mm-hmm. But
Power Windows was a good album.
Yeah, they were good albums.
Hold Your Fire was a great album.
Right.
But I think Power Windows was kind of their last.
But I don't, there's nothing on Permanent Waves or Moving Pictures, Signals, or Grace Under Pressure where I go, you
put one of those albums on. You put it on from track one and listen to it all the way through.
There's no skippers by the time you get to.
I mean, I think one of the best songs they ever wrote is on Power Windows and Big Money. I mean,
sure,
that is quite possibly the best bass line ever recorded on music.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
On any song, and Presto and Hold Your Fire and even Roll the Bones. And Counterparts I loved because there was a little bit of a grittiness and a return to rock and roll. But to me, just personally, and a lot of it probably has to do with where I was. I mean, I was 11 and 12 years old, when these albums came out. It just, that was the soundtrack to my preteen years. I mean, into my teen years. Mm-hmm. And I still, I mean, when I still go to put on Rush, these are the albums that I listen to. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, Signals might be my favorite out of all of them.
Signals is a great album. Well, you know what? They're
all great.
They really are.
My point being is that a lot of people hold on to the 70s Rush. And yes, there were some great moments. Hemispheres is a great album. Mm-hmm. Many parts of The Farewell to Kings are wonderful. Mm-hmm. But to me, they are an 80s band. They came into their own in the 80s. And I don't think people realize just how big they were at that time. They were huge. I mean, they were, when you were walking down the hallway, the kids were either wearing a Van Halen shirt or a Rush shirt. That was it. Especially in my suburban ways. Now, yeah, there was a couple guys that piqued my interest who were wearing, Sex Pistols or the Dead Kennedys, but and I went on to sort of lean more in that direction later on in life anyway. But this was the band. This was the band that made all of that cock rock seem irrelevant.
And of all the bands and of all the albums that they've released, studio albums that they released the most studio albums in the 80s.
They were very prolific.
7 albums in the 80s, 7 studio albums.
Crazy.
It's just amazing. And then I would say one of the best Rush shows I've been to many Rush shows. I won't even get into the number that I've been to, but one of the best Rush shows I can say for me was probably the best Rush show I've been to was the Roll the Bones show. I got to sit front row center, and I believe you were next to me.
I was probably there. Yeah,
you were next. No, you were
next.
I
think there was.
But it's just there's such a. That's the other thing too. Their album work and their songwriting and the songs themselves, their live shows were amazing.
Well, they're the consummate. They were the guys who said if it doesn't sound exactly like the album live, we're not playing it.
They're not playing it, right?
And so they just and yeah, I mean, technology helped them along, but early on, I mean, there's all these funny memes and things like that out there. But Geddy Lee really was playing keyboards with his feet, playing his bass, and moving his microphone back into position with his nose. Mm-hmm. So, and you can say, and look, all of the criticism that is leveled at Rush is fair game. I get it. Yeah, I get it. But I think it's also the reason why they were around for so long.
Sure.
If he sounded like Simon Le Bon or, the lead singer of Bachman Turner Overdrive or Bad Company, they wouldn't have been around as long.
No, agreed. Absolutely agreed. So there you go. That's also our other tied for number 3 would be the group Rush. All right. Let's go to number 2 because that's a good place to go to after number 3, and we have a tie for number 2 again. Pete, why don't you do number 2?
Number 2, who coincidentally has a 2 in their name. It's U2.
U2?
Yeah, U2.
All right.
U2.
All right.
Both of you guys.
All right.
Listen, I never cared as much about the hype about U2 as I did about the music. I was happy that they were politically motivated, although we found out, maybe some of their songs weren't as politically driven as we thought, but
the song is not a rebel song.
Right, exactly. So that's exactly what I was referring to. But to me, this was just music that washed over you, and you put it on, and you didn't skip a track because everything had a connection and flowed, and they weren't afraid to so that you could barely hear what was going,
Right.
Even if I didn't understand exactly what they were referring to,
just their sound was so unique.
Yeah. And they were, and they talk about the Edge and
that's what I mean,
funky guitar tunings and stuff like that, and they didn't sound like anyone else, and there was no one else that really sounded like them. And whatever, so they got a little full of themselves, and some of their later stuff was crap, big time. But whatever.
Big Time was actually good.
But I think they had enough of an output that that was powerful and unique and moving. It was it could be music that you had on in the background, but for me, particularly some of the the 80s stuff, of course, was stuff that you put on and you listened. You might be reading or whatever, but you were listening to it because you just wanted to hear every sound, every texture, and you really appreciated what went into it and the production that went into it.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely,
they were huge, and they were charismatic, and
they maybe stood out. I mean, with the exception of one of the bands that's still on our list, to me, they stood out as much musically and visually than many, 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 many other bands for a lot of different reasons. They were definitely taking a little bit of what was coming out of the post-punk era, but they always had pop chops to them. There was always a hook. There were always really great songs.
Sure.
Right.
And there was a rawness and a uniqueness, especially in the early stuff where, again, like a lot of the bands on this list, the guitar was sitting in a different space, which left a lot of room for the drums and bass and the vocals. Mm-hmm. And it created this sonic sound, which was very, very, very different. And the Edge was really innovative, but so early on, so was the whole band in their approach to songwriting. You sort of heard a little bit of the Clash. You sort of heard a little bit of hard rock bands. You sort of heard a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But they were incredibly unique. And they also benefited from MTV, but in a different way. I mean, that grainy, rainy video footage of less than half filled Red Rocks made them household names. Those videos taken from Under a Blood Red Sky were all over MTV, and they were really powerful. Who's this guy running around with a mullet and riding boots and a white flag and
dressed all in black,
right?
Forever, And the other thing, a lot of the bands, it's always right. If there's a lead singer, right, who doesn't generally play an instrument or whatever, that's the front man, right? That's the face of the band, and usually it's the guitar player, right? Those are the two that
which it is in this case,
right. But for a while, at least, the Edge was not as out front.
Well, he never was
in that, right? That's what I mean. He was the other guy in the band that most people knew,
right?
But he didn't have, he didn't seem interested in being a presence. It was like, let Bono do that. Let him talk, let him tell the story. He's the front guy, and I'm going to sit back and make great music. And
right, and I mean, and
that was a little unusual because as we loved their music, we wanted to know more about the band, right?
But
and
it's Jagger and Richards, it's Steven Tyler and Joe Perry,
Richards and Perry were way more out front, at least than the Edge was, at least early on. I feel like, I knew his name, but I never knew anything about him.
Right.
Well,
but I'm saying Bono wasn't the first super outgoing, maybe a little over the top, and eventually annoying as shit frontman. Whoever
he was one
benefited from having another musical, partner who was, creating the background for what they were doing.
Right.
And I'll tell you too, some of those earlier albums, all great songs, and some of my favorite songs are some of the deeper tracks on those albums, not even just the single releases. But I always last time I saw them, they started playing at 8, I believe, and they did their final song, which was I believe, if memory serves, the third song in their 5th encore. They would not leave the stage. They kept coming back out. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Literally, probably 12:30 at night. Right. They played for over 4 hours. They just did not want to stop playing, and it was a tour. It was the tour that they had to cancel the year before, so they hadn't played in like a year and a half, and that was I believe that was like the first date back after the canceled tour the year before and everything else. So it was a pretty good show. But I actually used that as a bar bet kind of thing. I saw U2 3 times. All 3 places were different locations, but all 3 locations were a quarter mile away from each other. Where did I see them?
Oh, to Meadowlands. So.
Yeah, so giant Meadowlands Arena, Giant Stadium, and MetLife Stadium.
Yeah.
So there you go. But
I think their first 4 albums are, again, all 80s, all amazing.
Yep.
I lose after the Unforgettable Fire. The Joshua Tree is my least favorite album of theirs. Again, their most popular album of all time.
I was going to say, of course, you knew the answer to that because you actually saw the Joshua Tree tour with me.
Right. Well, I saw them on the Unforgettable Fire tour, which was the complete opposite. It was them in sweatshirts and one light on the stage.
Right.
And then, Rattle and Hum was kind of an extension of the Joshua Tree, and then they just got bigger. But I'm guessing the Joshua Tree was their biggest selling album of all time.
I can imagine. I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah.
Or Rattle and Hum, the combination of those. But all of that, Rattle and Hum back, Joshua Tree, Unforgettable Fire, War, October, and Boy, all the 80s, and all, geez, that's a pretty good record to have.
Pretty good. You would think. So,
yeah.
There you go. All right. That's our first tied for number 2, U2. I'll take number 2, and Harry can wrap up with starting off number 1. But number 2 is going to be another band out of England, another trio, if you will, and that's of course the Police. Of course, they got their start in 1977, but just the sound that they made. Their releases in the 80s were amazing. Oh geez, what do you got? What you call it?
Zenyatta Mandata was the first one, right?
No, yeah. I'm just saying, Zenyatta Mandata was the first one in the '80s, and Ghost in the Machine and Synchronicity. So they released 5 albums, right? That's the only. That's the downfall. They broke up after the 5th album. Sting went on his own. Andy Summers went on his own. Stuart Copeland, took more of a jazz route, and just amazing musicians.
Stuart Copeland doing a lot of movie music.
A lot of soundtrack work.
A lot of soundtrack stuff, right? And Stuart Copeland's just an amazing drummer. Sting is probably the most commercially successul of all of them separate, but and
maybe one of the most underrated bass players of all time.
Absolutely. Oh, he's a great bass player. Really is. But 3 of the 5 albums they released in the 90s. And Regatta de Blanc came out in 79, so most of those songs were still being played in the 80s. So, but Ghost in the Machine, Spirits of Material World, Every Little Thing, those songs were just amazing hits. And then, whatchamacallit, Synchronicity had so many hits, and just an amazing album as well. Their sound was
talk about going out on top, right?
Yeah, right. Go out when you got your best album there. But their sound was very reggae influenced, and it was really cool. And that actually, the Police playing a reggae type sound was actually an influence to Rush too, in some respects, and influenced their biggest hit off of their first album in the '80s, which was Spirit of Radio.
A little breakdown piece in it. Yeah.
Little breakdown piece towards the end of the song, yeah. But just the Police were, just an amazing band. And then Every Breath You Take obviously was their number 1 song off of Synchronicity. But it was there were so many other great tracks on there as well. King of Pain, Wrapped Around Your Finger, Synchronicity as well was a great song. Probably my favorite song off of that album. But anyway,
Synchronicity
Harry.
too. Yeah, they're great. Look. I think everybody knows about the Police. I think if you really want to get an idea of the Police, listen to their early live album where everything was. It was the '80s, so let's just say maybe it was enhanced, but it was played really loud, really fast, and really raw. And their last album that they released, which was Certifiable, which was their Live in Buenos Aires album off I think it was the last tour that they did. That album is my favorite Police album. They play all the hits. There's not a keyboard on it, except for maybe a bass pedal here or there. It's all incredibly raw. And it's almost as if you're listening, getting an insight into maybe what some of those songs sounded like when they were first jamming on them before they went into the studio. Right. And I'm not, I'm a big Police fan. But I was never blown away by some of the reunion concerts. They were good, but what they did at that show and what was that's captured on that, and I think there's a video for it too. But I would almost say, don't watch the video. Listen to it. Actually, just listen to that live album, which came out in, I think, 2009 or whatever. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely incredible. And I think it shows the Police at their best. It's just three guys really playing.
Yeah.
And look, Sting's one of the best songwriters, maybe the best songwriter of that era. Mm-hmm. None of these guys have ever done anything remotely as good or as interesting to me on their own as they do in the Police. So there's something about the tension and maybe occasional fighting and infighting and power struggles within the band that created some great music. And yeah, it wasn't meant to last forever, but that whatever they had going on that night when they recorded that, it's really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. And I think it shows the Police. I wish there was more of that on the studio albums. Having said that, my favorite studio album of theirs is the one that took a hard left turn, and it was really dark, and that's Ghost in the Machine. But
sure.
But that's my favorite Police album.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say I saw the reunion concert. Actually, I saw them twice.
Yeah, I saw them 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. But I saw the reunion concert in 2007. Right. And I thought it was good.
No, it was great. Don't get me wrong, but it was not as good as that recording.
Well, yeah. I mean, it had been 25 years since they had played together at that point, or 24 or whatever. But yeah, it was just. It was amazing to sit there and see them again. But
part of my unsatisfaction is having to go see them in a basketball arena. I've never really liked going to see bands in giant arenas. I don't, and I think that was my first arena tour show that I'd been to in years. I mean, I hadn't seen anybody, so that was really sort of a little strange to me, but yeah, they're amazing.
I saw them at the Carrier Dome, was the Synchronicity tour, which is probably my least favorite of their studio albums, although there's a couple of great tracks on it. But to me, it's kind of like trending towards the Sting sound.
It's a little sterile at times.
Yeah, and away from it's not a terrible album, but it's not the first one I'd put on. It would be Zenyatta Mandata or maybe Outlandos.
Yeah, well, I love "Driven to Tears" is a great song.
Yeah,
and listen to that live version of that. I mean,
I will say this: Stuart Copeland has always been my favorite drummer.
Right.
To me, he has just the tastiest licks, and never heard a rock and roll drummer use a flam tap better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Than Stuart Copeland. Just everything's just crisp, and the sound of his drums, those tiny little hi-hats.
Absolutely.
And when I snappy snare and stuff.
The reunion concert I saw them in 2007, he for Wrapped Around Your Finger, he came out and had percussion set up in front of his kit, and he came out and stood up and played the percussion, and the drum sounds he got out of that percussion standing and not even sitting behind a kit is better than some drummers.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah,
he does that with Oysterhead, which is his band with Trey and Les Claypool, and he does quite a few songs that way. And actually, I think he did 3 or 4 songs on that Police tour where he got up on that percussion set and did it, and it is amazing to hear him do that.
It was crazy. So yeah, just
and Andy Summers.
Yeah, Andy Summers is great. Yeah.
By the way, Andy Summers.
Andy Summers,
which my favorite,
most underrated and underappreciated
guitarist,
and highly accoladed,
and my favorite guitarist. And my favorite Police song is Mother.
So,
yeah.
But in that whole genre, I have to say that the Police, right behind Rush, are my, Rush. Looking at me right now, you can tell. Obviously, Rush is my favorite band, but the Police are right behind him. And
I'll say this for Synchronicity. The lyrics were great for a lot of the songs. It's just the music itself was not my favorite, but it's really great lyrical writing on those albums.
They were. Never. All right.
And I felt the same way. And going back and listening to it now, some of the cuts that you never heard on, like Mrs. Krudenko, and Synchronicity 2, and even Tea in the Sahara and Murder by Numbers. Those are the songs.
Murder by Numbers is a great song.
Yeah, those are the songs that kind of, I think I stopped listening to this album because I was sick of hearing King of Pain on the radio every 3 minutes. Well,
that was the thing. If you didn't go out and get it, you weren't exposed to those songs.
Right. But Synchronicity 2 was actually, maybe ironically, their most rocking song that they ever did. And the lyrics on that song are just
amazing.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So I agree with you.
One of my favorite songs is Synchronicity 2, and but of course on Airplay you only heard Every Breath You Take and King of Pain is all
which now when I go back and listen to them, which I have recently, you're like, Jesus Christ, this is really great pop music.
Sure. Well, the problem isn't that the song wasn't good; it was that it got played every 5 minutes. Right. That was the problem.
And it wasn't what you wanted to hear out of a band that you kind of knew from playing a lot more upbeat kind of.
If you loved I Can't Stand
raw,
Losing You,
exactly.
Then by default you could not like King of Pain because they couldn't be farther apart as far as what they were.
Exactly. So,
if you had that sensibility, right, which as a young person I know I did, and a lot of people did.
Right.
Sure.
Well, this is what I like, and I can't like that. I can like other things, but not that because
it doesn't fit into what I like. So I'm not going to like it.
It's the opposite of what I really love, so I must hate it.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, there you go. That's our other number 2, and that would be The Police. All right. Harry, start us off with the number 1. Let us. We'll all talk, obviously, but
the number 1 band
is your number 1. So. Go for it.
The name of the band is Talking Heads.
Mm-hmm.
And they got their start in 77, obviously. Their first album titled Talking Heads 77.
Mm-hmm.
2 more albums in the 70s, including one that's in 79, which I absolutely love, called Fear of Music.
Mm-hmm.
But then the 80s came, and they did Remain in Light. And the reason why I have them in as the number 1 band is Remain in Light and Speaking in Tongues, Little Creatures were all great studio albums, but they did 2 live albums in the 80s, which are 2 of my favorite albums of all time. And one is the name of this band is Talking Heads, which was released in 82, which has Adrian Belew on it. And then the other one, 2 years later, and almost an entirely different band and sound, was Stop Making Sense, which again, much like it became more of a multimedia thing, where I think David Byrne especially took the medium of video and concert footage to a totally different place.
Right.
And they were probably at their height at that time because of this. But those 2 albums alone, to me, are absolute masterpieces. And it shows a band that went from really a trio in 1977 with very minimalist songs to adding Jerry Harrison and more songs about building food and Fear of Music and Remain in Light. There were a few albums in the late 70s which are quintessential to their discography.
Sure.
But Fear of Music, Remain in Light, Speaking in Tongues, and True Stories, and those 2 live albums, to me, there's nothing better. I mean, I can listen still to this day. There's things that there's live footage or something on those that are just absolutely amazing. And yes, everybody knows of. I think the other thing that the Talking Heads did and there's a couple other bands that didn't quite make this list, like Devo and some others, is that as a kid looking at this band, I said, you know what? Maybe there is a place in rock and roll for a bunch of weird nerds. And that's probably the biggest influence that they had on anybody. I don't think there's a band out there that does not appreciate the Talking Heads. They could be a metal band. It could be, a pop band. It could be a salsa band. I think that they are one of those bands that sort of transcends almost everything just based on the music that they put out. And none of them are shredders or going to be named but I'll tell you what, Chris Franz and Tina Weymouth are one of the most underrated rhythm sections of all time. And I would say that, especially on their early albums, Tina Weymouth's bass lines and what she did with the basic sketching of their songs,
yeah, she was great,
was incredibly innovative.
Yeah.
And anyway, they'll always be number one on my list, especially for the late 70s into the early 80s, because I think that they, think about where they came from. They were playing. They were a bunch of kids who came down from Rhode Island, and we're sharing a stage with the Ramones and Blondie, and they look like three scared weirdos playing really minimalist.
They were three scared weirdos.
Kind of
what they were. Yeah.
Stiff white person funk in front of the angriest punk crowds on the planet. And that's where they got their start. And
CBGBs, yeah.
And I'm not sure there's a band that, maybe the Beatles, but I'm not sure there's a band that just progressed so far in a 8, 9, 10-year period, because basically they were done by 1988. I mean, I would argue they were done by Little Creatures in 85. So you're talking about an 8-year span where they went from, Psycho Killer to, Baby. Yeah, or even after
Baby though.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that they much like the Police, much like a lot of these bands on this list, they never stood still. They never said this is what we sound like. Right. They just kept progressing. They were the opposite of AC/DC.
Right.
But they always sounded like the Talking Heads.
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember at parties where the Talking Heads were playing, and it didn't matter what anybody's music style was, what their favorite style was. If they were a metalhead, if they were a lover of pop, if they were a lover of the Talking Heads, everybody had a Talking Heads song that they knew and they loved from different eras or from different albums or whatever. But every single, like from the hardest punk kid in the school, which we had probably 4 in my school, they had a Talking Heads song that they would sing out loud every time it came on. So I think your analysis.
I've talked music and obviously know a ton of musicians in my life. I have to listen to them talk all the time, and I don't think I've ever met one that did not, in some way, shape, or form, have a deep respect and, in many cases, just admiration and love for this band.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we're great. And don't forget, I mean, there were huge MTV kicking off too.
Sure.
And then once in a lifetime, don't forget this,
Well, but that's the thing, is that it was. I mean, think about all of that, and the fact that MTV was so starved for content that this crazy, weird,
really strange video,
Revenge of the Nerds on Acid video was their big breakthrough. I mean, that's what was great about MTV back in the day. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure if it wasn't for MTV, if you wouldn't have had bands like Devo and the Talking Heads and Peter Gabriel, who didn't emerge as quickly and as big as they did.
I think Peter Gabriel would have, but the other ones, yeah, sure, absolutely, I agree.
Well, I mean, look, Devo is still a big band, but it was the visual. What I'm getting at is that these bands,
people were
doing their own visual content without a large market
studio behind them making
or even any place for it to be seen. They were selling it at concerts and playing it at their concerts.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they were ahead of the time, and they were art rock bands. They were bands that were based around the mix of visual and the music. Right. They weren't just jeans and a t-shirt staring at the stage.
Right.
And so when MTV finally came around to what it was that they were already doing, they were it was tailor-made for that. And the Talking Heads continued to take that form, as did Devo, obviously did Peter Gabriel, to new heights. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have made it without those elements, but I think it's an essential part of their story and how I remember them.
Well, I think it was a first exposure for a lot of people.
Right, exactly.
The video, right? Because you
Exactly.
weren't necessarily hearing the music on the radio.
Right.
On
They didn't really play. They didn't give
stations.
Psycho Killer that much airplay.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But you could see you could put on MTV and you'd see this video,
Right.
and you like the video, or maybe you just like the music more, and then you could seek them out. So, yeah.
I mean, in the early days of MTV, I mean, I think my musical taste was formed. I mean, I saw Devo, the Talking Heads, Wall of Voodoo. I mean, every weirdo band, pop music was being played across the country on I don't, and I think that's what led to them being played on the radio as opposed to vice versa.
I agree. And then that song too, Once in a Lifetime too. That's when what you call Brian Eno, came in and started working with them. And story I heard actually, what the verses of that song was all that David Byrne wrote, and that the actual chorus of Once in a Lifetime, was Brian Eno. So I mean, you take that chorus out because the rest of that the music behind that chorus is the same music as the verse. It's just the vocals and the.
And what Eno really added to it was that the fact that the song, if you try to listen to the music of the song and sing it, it doesn't always line up.
Not at all.
Because the chorus just steamrollers right over the same riff.
The same riff is going on from the verses. Absolutely.
And that's what makes it interesting. And that's that sort of syncopated synth, that is obviously very Eno.
It's
it's just F sharp to A to F sharp. That's all it is. Yeah.
But
it's funny. I tell my son about that Werewolves of London,
right?
And I go, it's just the same riff over and over and over again. It doesn't change verse, chorus, whatever. It just keeps repeating. And he's like, "What?" He goes, "There's no song that does." I go, "Yeah, just listen to it."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Some of the best songs are that way. Look, Once in a Lifetime also is something that the Talking Heads did quite a bit, and you started to say there wasn't very much guitar in this song until when he lays into those power chords at the very end, and that is absolute genius.
Sure,
absolute genius.
Yeah, it was. So.
I mean, this is a weird, artsy, funky band that at some point in your life everyone has danced to.
Right.
And look, as far as their influence, I mean, there's not a band today that you don't say, all right. I mean, look, I've been ripping them off for years.
Gotta love it. Well, there you go.
What works?
That's our
number one.
That was our number one, the Talking Heads. I'd be remiss if I did not go back really quick, and I totally forgot to say. With last year Eddie Van Halen passing away, and earlier in the year Neil Peart passing away as well. So there's two greats off of this list gone last year. But God rest in peace. But I did want to really quick the bands that were left off that we had, the three of us had voted for, but didn't make the cut, so to speak. I'm just gonna list them. I'm just gonna say them. You got Devo, we mentioned before. Devo just missed the cut, as did Peter Gabriel as well. Just missed the cut. And then there was the others beyond that would be In Excess. That was another great 80s band. Guns N' Roses. You can't talk 80s without Guns N' Roses as far as rock goes, especially. But I mean, they were right at the tail end. I mean, they came out for about a year and a half in the 80s, and then it was in the 90s. So, whatchamacallit. And then a bunch of yours. Harry did list a bunch of mine. A bunch of yours. Well,
bunch of mine that nobody else likes.
Well, Harry did. In the interest of full disclosure, Harry did give us a list of 20.
Right. So I thought they were all.
They were all totally.
There's a whole kind of
Public
Image Limited, Beastie Boys, The Replacements,
Joy Division, Black Flag, Run DMC, Public Enemy, and Sonic Youth.
Sure.
And there's one other person that I would put on this list, and that's Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and there were another one that had a 70s, had a 90s, and beyond, but 80s was big.
And then there's also a
Yeah.
whole genre of music that we sort of ignored, which
metal,
the hair metal, which
or just metal.
Just metal in general.
But I kind of separate the two because metal was good,
right?
A lot of the hair metal, in my opinion, is shit.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, Ozzy Osbourne's solo stuff in the early 80s was incredible.
Sure.
Iron Maiden.
That's metal. Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. Those are,
Scorpions. I mean,
Scorpions
was big in the 80s.
But then
they were around since the 60s.
When you get to like Poison or
we're not talking about that.
Rat or any of those.
Well, now come on.
What? Rat?
That first Rat album, Round and Round's a pretty damn good song.
Round and Round's a great song.
Not that they never did anything good.
But I get it. The thing that pisses me off the most about the song Round and Round, I've been waiting since 1984 for Rat to tell me why.
Yeah, they haven't.
They had one other song that was kind of good. There's
one other band that I think started off the 70s, actually, late 70s really well. And they reached their peak probably in the 90s even. And they're a band that definitely their best output was in the 80s to me, and that's Def Leppard. Sure. And they're a band that I could absolutely love one of their songs and then absolutely hate the next one.
Right.
And a lot of that's just the production and the fact that they took the worst of that metal shit, that shitty guitar tone with the reverberated drums, no bass to be found, and then they took all the overproduction of the 80s vocals and just layered it onto the dumbest lyrics ever created by human beings.
Right.
But their albums before that were pure hard rock. They probably sounded more like AC/DC.
Yeah.
High and Dry, I mean, is more like AC/DC and Thin Lizzy than it is Poison or Rat or anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they seemed like they were a band that somebody got a hold of them.
Yeah, Mutt Lange.
Who knew better and said, "This is what you want to." But that's when they had their commercial success, the great success.
And so the '80s sound helped them, in their defense, keep their band together when they had a tragedy and they had to go to more of a programmed electronic drum sound. I mean, that helped Rick Allen stay in the band.
Sure.
So, and who are we to say? I mean, they were enormous. Enormous. Again, very much high on the list of Gen X.
Absolutely. And I saw them. I did see them
Gen
once.
X mom bands.
There you go.
I hated that new stuff.
I did see them once, and they actually they headlined, and Queensryche actually opened up for them.
That's another band. It's a lot of people want to. I just could never get into Queensryche.
Could never get into Queensryche.
What was the other band that was even worse than Queensryche? That
there's
80s, 90s post-prog metal, not Queensryche, but
Wasp?
No, super proggy, like everybody could play, but they were never playing together, and all their songs sounded like shit. John Mayung and Dream Theater.
Dream Theater, Dream
God,
Theater.
That was horrible.
Yeah, Dream Theater. What about go back to the early '80s, Asia? That was a super band of sorts.
You know what? I mean, there were some great songs there. It's not the best work by any of them. And John Wetton's a pretty incredible guy. He went from playing with King Crimson to doing, Only Time Will Tell.
Right.
Yeah.
But come on. We're leaving now.
Right.
I mean, come on. There's something nostalgic about it now. Where it's
it was
kind of a thing where you knew you weren't supposed to like it.
Right.
It's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, because somebody was going, "Do you know who these guys are?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, it
comes as no surprise."
It got in your ear and into your head.
What was the big one?
Heat of the Moment.
It was the same as it was this. And then what came first, that or Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes? Because it was almost the same.
Heat of the Moment came out a year before Owner of a Lonely Heart.
But it's the same thing.
Heat of the Moment came out in '82. Owner of a Lonely Heart came out in '83.
After it.
Yeah.
But Carl Palmer's drumming on that song alone is worth
pretty damn good.
Makes it pretty damn good. But
pretty damn good.
And Yes is another band. You think of them from the 70s, but their biggest they were never really a big arena band until the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever that album was, what is it? 902.
901 not 90210 no 90125.
There's a lot of zip code.
90125.
OU 812 90210.
90125 because the live one was 9012 live.
That was one of the, and then Big Generator, which wasn't quite as good. They were really big at that point.
Yeah, and then Union they did in the late 80s. And that was everybody. Every member that was ever in the band was everything.
We
saw that show.
I forget where it was.
But
the Orange County Speedway.
When they did it was
in the round.
In the round, yeah, and it was Tony Kaye and Rick Wakeman.
Mm-hmm.
It was Alan White and Bill Bruford.
Yeah, I remember Bruford walking around behind the drum set.
Yeah.
I mean, Bruford with King Crimson is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
When you get Bill Bruford and Tony Levin together, it's pretty incredible stuff.
And then you had Steve Howe and Trevor Rabin.
Right.
And then of course you had John Anderson and Chris Squire, but the only ones that weren't ever replaced, and pretty much straight through. But in any event, that was a great show. That was an amazing show. But what can you say about? I mean, obviously we're talking about. There's another band, obviously, yes. So plenty of other genres, plenty of other bands. It's hard to, I'm shocked that we got it down to 15. We could have probably listed 30 each and been each of them been different too. So maybe
today that when I made that list, it is the list that it made. If I made
you know what?
Tomorrow, it might be a little bit different.
Well, you know what? If you look at the list too, it's all over the place. It's not there's rock in there, there's prog in there, there's new wave in there, punk in there. There's.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of bands that could if this list was expanded to 50 or even 25, it'd be. I mean, look, you guys had In Excess on your list. I would argue that Midnight Oil was a band that were just as big and probably bigger in Australia than In Excess, and In Excess was huge.
Sure,
but they were definitely 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Midnight Oil was 80s. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You look at a band like The Cure or The Smiths.
I think there's The Cure. I had to do some cuts because I usually take it all the way down because we have the spaces to 12 and we have like 3 10s and we're doing that all the way with sports and all. But whatchamacallit, I just pulled The Cure off, and I actually for a while I had Queen on there, and then I'm like I got to take Queen off because they're 2 70s. It's more their bulk.
The game was 1980.
There was a lot of great stuff in the 80s, but there was more stuff I think is in the 70s. It was just there was too much more in the 70s than in the 80s.
The more iconic stuff is in the 70s.
Yeah. So, but other than We Are the Champions and another one Bites the Dust, but there's plenty of other stuff in the 80s. But there's too much stuff in the 70s for that. But you're right. We could expand this easy to 25 and 50 even. But so there you go. But you're right.
We're still clocking in a nice, quick show.
Quick show. This is our longest in a while.
But look, and I knew it would be, which is why I was saying we shouldn't,
wrap it up. Well, we
good
finished.
Thing we didn't get started until after 8.
How about Elvis Costello and Squeeze?
And sure, absolutely.
I mean,
we can go on and on and on. And
Quiet Riot.
Talk about them all. I actually saw Quiet Riot.
Kevin DuBrow was almost the new lead singer for AC/DC.
Really?
Until they found out he was
dead. They auditioned
dead.
him a couple of times. Yeah.
Didn't he die? Or is he still alive?
Well, no, I mean after Bon Scott.
No. Oh, okay.
Back then.
Yeah. Not last week.
But
I don't know. Did he die? He might have.
But so I saw Quiet Riot actually opened up for Black Sabbath back in '82, I believe.
Wow.
But yeah. So,
anyway. And we forgot Whitesnake. We forgot to mention Whitesnake.
We can't forget Whitesnake.
I mean, then there's a couple
hair metal bands,
right? Then there's some bands that were started in the 70s, but definitely were part of that new wave, sort of new romantic scene, like Roxy Music and Talk, and obviously
Brian Ferry on his own with great music in the 80s.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Bauhaus, Susie and the Banshees, Sisters of Mercy, and then you have all the Killing Joke, and
go on and on.
You can go on. Dinosaur Jr.
There you go.
I mean, they're
We mentioned you mentioned that hair bands. I mean, you forgot you can't forget Winger. You know.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Who is the band? I think they're big. I think they were actually bigger in the 90s.
Cinderella.
Well, no.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Cinderella's the
Cinderella's
worst.
well, there was another band filled with like all these super players, and then they released this one shitty. I shouldn't say shitty. They all probably have houses in Malibu because of this song, but it was Billy Sheehan and anyway, it was like this really, really poppy, like acoustic song, and they were huge. What were they called? What was that band called? Mr. Big. Mr. Big.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Sure.
But like, here's a guy who was like one of the, played. These guys could shred anything, and then they made it big with like a lot of bands did with a little ballad.
Look at David Lee Roth's band.
Right.
Right.
That was Billy Sheehan. That was Billy Sheehan.
It was Billy Sheehan and
Paul Gilbert. Right? Oh no, Steve Vai.
Steve Vai. For Christ's
Vai,
sake.
yeah.
And then his biggest hit was a cover of Just a Gigolo.
Yeah, although Going Crazy that was my favorite.
Going Crazy
that was a great song. But talk about like three of the biggest egos.
Yeah.
And then Greg Bissonette playing the drums going, boy, I hope this doesn't explode.
Right.
Was the beginning of the video, David Lee Roth walks in as the headhunter or whatever.
Yeah.
My doctor says I need a laxative.
Yeah, really.
Not in this house, you don't.
No. That's funny. But Skid Row.
Skid Row actually, they were kind of bordering on that hair band thing, but they were actually a really good band. And then, if you want to get into metal, you have to talk about Slayer and Pantera and all of those bands that were definitely big in the 80s. I mean, I remember going to Lemoore and geez, I thought I was going to die being in the pit with some of those bands.
In Brooklyn, yeah.
Yeah, it was just crazy. But, I mean, that's what a lot of that started. And, yeah, I mean, it broke bigger in the 90s, but it definitely had its roots in the 80s. No pun intended.
Exactly.
And then what was the...
Tears for Fears.
What was the band? What was the hard rock band of Nerds?
They were just a local New Jersey cover band. You're talking
about the cover band, the Nerds?
No.
Or just nerds that were
they
a hard
were
rock
nerds.
band.
Oh, they might be Giants?
They might be Giants?
No. They played harder. They played harder than They Might Be Giants. It'll come to me eventually.
They were like a hard rock band?
Yeah.
5 seconds after we end the podcast.
I don't know.
Interesting.
I'll remember.
Like real nerds or just a little nerdy?
They were kind of nerdy guys.
I mean, that could be almost anybody.
Yeah.
Be. This is very true.
I'll think of it.
Weezer?
Nope.
That's more 90s.
Yeah, no, this was...
I don't know. King Crimson?
Nope.
Thomas?
There's a one... I think I had a one-word name.
One-word name. I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway. But we could go on all night with this.
Yeah,
we could go.
We will next week when we do top bands of the 90s.
Exactly, top bands of the 90s. Then we'll go back to the 70s and the sports show. But we actually finished the sports show in just over an hour tonight. So this has been well over 2 hours of music. So
right. Next
we're
week
actually going to do is I'm actually going to separate this, so it's actually 2 different shows for the podcast, for the audio podcast.
Good, so we can take off next week.
So no. We're doing another show next week. We got to do the sports show to kick off the NFL season. But no, as far as the audio goes,
gotcha.
It'll be on. We'll split it and be 2 different shows. But
all right, folks.
All right.
On that note,
we'll have maybe a couple more of these here and there throughout. We'll do some tangent kind of stuff. But in any event, on that note, we will wrap the show up for today. We want to thank everybody for watching, and for those of you just listening to the audio podcast, thanks for listening. Don't forget to visit our website, www.getonwithitpodcast.com. That's getonwithitpodcast.com. And please remember, like us and follow us on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for the Get On With It podcast. And, of course, all of our shows are on our YouTube channel as well, on the Logger Room channel, I should say. Remember, we go live with the video podcast on both Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right.
Really?
That was an interesting sound. And for those of you that just want to listen to the audio podcast, you can do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, and Stitcher. Plus, the show is now available on Google Podcasts and Amazon Music Podcasts as well. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to one or more of those feeds, and you'll never miss a show. Again, thanks for following along with us. But before we stop, we did forget one thing.
What's that?
The over-under.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, the over-under.
Over-under. So I'll pause briefly for the sign-off there, and let's do the over-under.
All right, so the over-under was a number of CDs on the shelves of Wonder here.
Mm-hmm.
32 and a half or something like that?
I think was it 31 or 31 and a half?
You said 31 and a half, yeah.
31 and a half was the over-under. So I will take your numbers now. Well, I don't have to write them down. There's only two of them.
There you go.
Who wants to go first?
Harry, you go first.
I'm always wrong on this, so I'm going to go under.
Under 31 and a half. Okay.
I'm going to go... you know what? I'm going to go opposite of Harry. I'm going to go over. Because I was thinking over all along, but I'm not going to rethink it. I'm going over.
There you go.
All right. Well, I have fastidiously culled the CDs from the shelf in a number of different places. So first up, let's see if we can get I have this box.
Oh, God.
Which almost looks like it was made for CDs.
Yeah, I'm definitely wrong.
Not actually that many in here. There's a bunch of empty cases, which I did not include. So, and there's a bunch of other stuff. Check this out. This is the Ace card
for
the old Nintendo DS.
Mm-hmm. Does that count?
No. It's not a
good.
But I just thought I'd share that with you. So that has a total of only 16 discs in it.
Only 16.
So then there's this box.
Oh, boy.
Which has not that many because most of them are in big fat cases.
Right.
This is going to be 25 minutes.
This is a lot of school stuff. There's some interesting stuff in here,
Right.
including Windows 7.
Do you have any macaroni art in there?
Windows 7. And
the paste is edible.
This is 2014 edition of Finale Music.
I guess that counts, huh?
That counts. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was just a pile of other ones here.
Oh, God.
Which include, did we talk about DJ Yes1? The guy on the Atlantic City Boardwalk that made me buy this?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Here it is, the Pokemon mix.
There he is.
So that's a current. That's a current CD.
Current CD.
Yeah, this is from a few years ago.
Ish.
And then some other stuff, including the drivers for my Epson printer. So that comes out to a total of 15.
Okay.
And if you add 16 and 15, you get what?
31.
31, yeah. Then
All right.
I have the spindle.
See you guys later.
I have the spindle of blanks.
There you go.
Well, if they're blanks, that doesn't count. It has to have content on it.
I don't know. Does it?
I don't think so.
This is
Do we have a push?
The fact that
hang on. All right, this one here has content.
All right.
This is the 2013.
So that's 32.
That's 32. That's enough. Yeah.
So John wins.
32, and then this one has some stuff on it too. So there we go.
There you
So including all of these, the total was 65.
65. Wow. But if you just include the two that have the content
only the two
on them,
that have
33.
content.
33.
33.
So
that was, I think, a great pick of the number by me.
Yeah.
Considering I hadn't looked at anything.
That was a pretty good pick based on that, sure.
And really, I based that number this was right up here, and I could look at it and
that's
got to be at least 30 right there.
Next over under, I'm going to go with what I think it is and go the opposite.
And go the opposite way.
Opposite, George.
There you go.
So I don't know what the next over under. We'll pick something next week.
Pick it next week, and we'll do it the following week. There you go.
Yeah, we could, because I don't want to. We could do it every 2 weeks. Cause
we'll do it every 2 weeks. Yeah, that works.
Maybe we'll do.
Unless you know what it is now.
No, I don't want to say.
All right.
All right.
Well, you can always prep for it, and we can look. We don't have to prep for it. You do.
That's what I'm saying.
You can always figure it out, and then we'll just
I'll
do it.
I'll find something good, and then I can just say what it is, and you can guess, and we don't have to spread it out over 2 weeks.
I think he wins that CD from the guy he got on the boardwalk.
I win the CD from the guy in the Atlantic City
I get
Boardwalk.
to keep the DJ Yes one.
There you go.
What does John win?
Burn me a copy of it. That's all.
Oh yeah. I'll send you a copy of the
Best of Spaghetti and the Meatball.
2013 NISMA conference.
There you go.
Young Composers Showcase.
I'll be listening. I'll be looking forward to that one. All right. Well, there you go. That'll wrap it up, folks. Again, thanks for following along with us. Have a wonderful week, rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Watch a lot of sports. Enjoy them, and we will talk to you soon. Take care, folks. Cheers.